Hello guys. Sorry for the wait, I had some mock exams but I am back on schedule. Hope you will enjoy this new part.
The four shinobi of Konoha returned to their village quickly and without incident. Naruto couldn't wait to get the best ramen in town. As he was about to dash off, Kakashi reminded him they had to report back at the Hokage Tower first. But ramen. Kakashi's one visible eye twitched violently. Every time he thought he was making progress. The three reported directly to the Hokage. Sarutobi had a pipe in his mouth as he saw Team 7 enter to make their report. The first report had led to the mission being upgraded to a rank B mission. The second report after the battle that led to the death of Zabuza turned it into an A-ranked mission. Hiruzen had great confidence in Kakashi's abilities, but really this was a bit much for a young genin team's first mission. Kakashi made his report efficiently and effectively. The Hokage's eyebrows shot up at having the genin kill so quickly. He had wanted them to retain their innocence a little longer. He shook himself out of his thoughts as the elite Jonin continued the debrief. When Kakashi finished, the third Hokage smiled at the four shinobi. "You've exceeded my expectations, well done." Kakashi took the praise in stride while his genin team basked in it. Kakashi could tell even Sasuke was affected by the words, though he hid it well. Naruto's smile was an ear-to-ear grin. Sakura was more demure, but she positively glowed at the praise from the village's legendary leader. The Hokage dismissed everyone but Kakashi. Naruto invited the other two for ramen. Sasuke shrugged and agreed. Kakashi would expect him to be part of the team. With Sasuke going, it made Sakura's choice a foregone conclusion. All three of the genin headed to Ramen Ichiraku. Hiruzen looked at Kakashi. "I understand you don't want it in writing that Sasuke has unlocked the Sharingan." "Hi, if no one knows Sasuke has developed the Sharingan, he will be better protected. A live Sharingan can make him a target. Furthermore, it always helps for a shinobi to be underestimated." The Hokage chewed on his pipe in thought. "I'll keep it out of the written reports. I understand caution, but only a few people have access to the reports. Sometimes your wariness is more like paranoia, Kakashi-san." The masked Jonin looked at the Hokage and replied with simple logic, "If I take precautions that aren't needed, it is a minor inconvenience. But if I take precautions when it is needed, it could make all the difference. Any edge, no matter how small, that will help them survive, I will give them." He couldn't find fault with the argument, so he agreed to do as his Jonin asked. The written copies of the report were different than what had been orally communicated. Most everything was the same, but the Sharingan was absent completely, as was any mention of the genin helping Kakashi deal with Zabuza. With a bow, Kakashi left Sarutobi alone with his thoughts. Kakashi took the pay for the mission and also turned in the sealing scroll that had Zabuza's head. Zabuza's blade was also given up, but instead of using it as part of the bounty, it would go to the care of Konoha, where it would find a worthy wielder. Kakashi would split the money with his team in the next morning. For now, it was time to see if the latest Uchiha had arrived while he was gone. Naruto was ecstatic. Not only was he finally getting his favorite food at Ramen Ichiraku, but both of his teammates would be with him. Naruto introduced them to Teuchi and his daughter Ayame. Sasuke said little while Sakura introduced herself properly. Soon they were all eating delicious ramen, while neither was as enthusiastic as Naruto. It was tasty and they enjoyed it. After completing the ramen, they went their separate ways. Naruto returned to his home. Since placing a few traps, the home had not been vandalized. The fact that he was a shinobi now meant that he could legally assault someone for breaking into his residence. Naruto made a dozen clones that began reading books. Naruto considered what he would like to with the money he would soon be receiving as his share of the bounty and the A-ranked mission. His come use new furniture, but Naruto honestly didn't care about that. He wanted to get stronger. He wanted to purchase something that would enhance his skills. Kakashi had told him about chakra blades that would be very expensive but extremely useful for a wind affinity like himself. Naruto also thought about getting alternative weaponry. Most shinobi favored small weaponry that allowed for easy carrying and stowing so that hand signs could be used at a moment's notice. He did like the thought of wielding a katana or a staff. From reading historical battles, he knew his Jiji used a staff in battle that he summoned. Naruto decided to go shopping at a weapon store and see what might be effective for him. He left his clones to continue their reading while he used his henge to look like a nondescript teenage shinobi. That done, he went into town, avoiding all of the glares and hate he had been subjected to for most of his life. The young genin was still kicking himself for not thinking of this plan prior to Kakashi telling him. Naruto found himself browsing a weapon shop. Like a kid in a candy store, Naruto drooled over the potential additions to his shinobi arsenal. The shopkeeper allowed him to handle the various weapons, and Naruto tried a few moves with each of them. Laughter interrupted once one of his practice strikes. He turned and found a young kunoichi shaking her head. "You are holding that katana all wrong." Naruto flushed, thankful the henge hid his embarrassment. "I never trained with any weapons other than the academy standard ones," he defended himself. Naruto recognized the girl. She was a fellow genin a year ahead of his graduating class. Her name was Tenten, and she had a reputation for knowing her way around weapons. Naruto's clones had learned a lot just observing the village, and this was one of the little facts that came to mind. Tenten showed Naruto the proper way to hold the blade. Naruto had an idea. "Hey Tenten, how about you some weapons and help me pick out something that will be useful for me?" Tenten looked at the shinobi she had never seen until now and asked, I have my own training to do, plus you haven't even introduced yourself." "Who are you?" Naruto considered lying, but he suspected the keen-eyed kunoichi would be able to detect the henge and any falsehood. Instead, he leaned in close. "I'm Naruto, part of Team 7. A lot of the shop owners don't like me, so I use a henge." Tenten was surprised that Naruto was in disguise. Naruto had been held back, so for a brief time he had actually been in Tenten's class. A subtle Naruto instead of a bright orange overly excitable Naruto sparked her curiosity. Tenten said, "All right, let's do this. I'll show you a variety of weapons for a couple of hours, and you tell me what you've been up to these days." Naruto laughed. "All right. Let's head the practice field right now." Both of them left the shop and proceeded to the nearest training field. Along the way, Naruto regaled Tenten with how awesome it was to be a shinobi. About how they went on their first mission outside of the village and how it had turned into a rank A mission. Naruto did manage to hold back anything related to his and his teammates' training. While Tenten was clearly a fellow Leaf shinobi, Kakashi had warned him about sharing news about his abilities. Spies existed in the shinobi world, and one never knew who was listening. Tenten didn't ask about that anyhow. Instead, she was fascinated by Zabuza's weapon, Kubikiribicho. Naruto didn't know why she was so obsessed with it, but he answered all of the questions she had. He didn't really know much about the weapon. Kakashi had been the one to do nearly all of the battle in that conflict. When they arrived at the practice field, Tenten showed the Jinchuuriki all types of weapons. Naruto was in awe at the arsenal she pulled out. Several of the weapons were not practical in his mind, but she wielded them with a grace that was astounding. Tenten had him test out several of the weapons and adjusted his forms and grip as needed. "Are you a close-range fighter, or do you prefer to stay in the back?" That was an interesting question. The immediate answer was a ranged fighter due to Kakashi's lessons. But Naruto had been working on looking underneath the surface. While Kakashi would want his team to stay back and minimize their risk, he expected Naruto to use his clones in close combat. Any weapon skill he learned could be transferable to his clones. Naruto answered her, "I'm in between. I don't mind getting in close though." Tenten frowned at the non-answer but then shrugged. "In that case, let's set you up with what you had in the store, a katana. It's straightforward but allows for a longer reach than a kunai, but still allows combat in close quarters." They spent the last 30 minutes going through weapon drills. Naruto thanked Tenten profusely and declared, "With this extra training I'll have all I need to be the next Hokage." Tenten rolled her eyes but accepted the thanks with good grace. Naruto asked her if she knew any good books or scroll techniques he could pick up for using a katana. She named a book he could pick up that showed the basic stances and a generic fighting style. Anything too far advanced is typically held secret by families or clans. Don't let that stop you though. Come up with your own style and your opponent will be in trouble because they won't have ever seen it before. Naruto again thanked her and returned to the shop to purchase a pair of katanas. Having backup equipment was another rule that his sensei had drilled into him. At the shop he also requested the chakra blades. Chakra blades were made of material that absorbed chakra and were rare. The store didn't have them, but if Naruto paid for them up front, he would order a pair of kunai made of the chakra-absorbent material. Naruto would have to come back the next day to put in the order, as Kakashi hadn't split the proceeds from the bounty yet. Naruto returned home excited about showing off his new weapon to the team tomorrow. Sakura had enjoyed the meal with the team. She loved her Sasuke-kun, and Naruto wasn't nearly as annoying as he used to be. The team was starting to feel like a family, and she wanted to do all she could to protect it. It was time to make a decision. Genjutsu or training in medical jutsu? Sakura made her decision based on what had happened in the battles they had been in. Death was swift, death was often instantaneous. Haku died to a kunai to the brain. Zabuza died due to his heart being obliterated by Kakashi's Kaidori. No medical jutsu could fix that. Threats to the team could be fatal before she even got a chance to heal. But what if she could prevent an attack from landing in the first place? What if she could use her superior chakra control to ensure her teammates didn't even get hit? With these thoughts in mind, she chose her specialty. It would be in Genjutsu. Genjutsu was a rare art in Konoha. The primary users had been the Uchiha clan through the use of their dojutsu. That path required the Sharingan, a clear dead end. The most famous Genjutsu user currently in the village was Kurinaya. The problem was that she had her own Genin team, and Jonin instructors should put all of their efforts on improving their own team. That went double for the first year as a Jonin. Kakashi would absolutely train her, but she knew that was not his specialty. Kakashi was a master at ninjutsu and an absolute terror with taijutsu, but his genjutsu was limited. Sakura would need someone else to help supplement her training in this if she was to develop it to the point where it could actually fool dangerous opponents. Sakura decided to put her ear to the ground and see if she could find a Jonin who was skilled with genjutsu who could tutor her a couple of times a week. Between that and the training Kakashi would give her, she should be able to make significant progress. Her share of the bounty would be used to pay for the lessons. Sakura felt a burst of energy inside of her. She had confidence in her choice. She was not going to be a liability to her team. Team 7 met up again the next day. As was typical, they quickly and efficiently completed a D-ranked mission and then turned to training. Kakashi talked to them about what they would want to tackle next on their training agenda. Kakashi was approving of Sakura's choice to specialize in genjutsu. He told her to continue working to improve her taijutsu and conditioning with weights. On that subject, he had purchased a new set of weights for all of them. These weights at first were incredibly light until they pushed chakra into them. These seals are designed to be only accessed by yourselves. Only increase the weight when I advise you to, but in a fight you can quickly release the excess weight. Additional, when we travel too much weight and you'll snap tree limbs as you leap from branch to branch. All three of the genin also had their weights increased. Kakashi created a pair of clones so he could have some one-on-one time with each of his students. The original went with Sasuke. He was going to teach the last Uchiha the original move he had created. The Kaidori. Sasuke had seen it in action and knew it was a fantastic kill move. It would burst through most defensive barriers, especially earth, which was often used for defense. Kakashi cautioned Sasuke on the use of it. Never use this on a comrade or a leaf shinobi. This jutsu should only be used on the enemies of Konoha. Sasuke promised to obey this command. Sasuke also learned his chakra reserve would only allow him to use it 2 times before being exhausted. With constant training you should be able to increase the number of times you can use this jutsu to 3 fairly quickly. With the aid of the Sharingan, it was easy for Sasuke to pick up the jutsu, and by the end of the day he had successfully performed the jutsu and slammed it into the earth, leaving a crater. Excellent work. Now on to your taijutsu training. Sasuke pushed his groaning muscles the limit with the new chakra weights. He was still able to maintain the perfection that Kakashi required in taijutsu forms. He was determined not to fall behind Naruto with weights and speed. With Sakura he taught her some more basic genjutsu applications. Most genjutsu operated on sight, but a few operated on auditory senses. The auditory ones were extraordinarily rare but very effective, since it meant the victim could be affected before even laying sight on the caster. I don't have any auditory genjutsu in my repertoire. It will be a long shot if your tutor has one either. Sight Genjutsu is still amazingly powerful. Remember, on this team you don't necessarily need to isolate and control an individual for a significant length of time. As soon as the Genjutsu has them, one of us should move to eliminate the threat instantly. The clone with Naruto observed him use the katana. Naruto explained his reasoning as well as Kakashi looked on. I need to get good with this so my clones can use it well. I'll still keep my hands free for using jutsu. Kakashi praised Naruto for the plan. Good thinking, Naruto. I'm glad you thought ahead of this. I'm also glad you are putting in the order for the chakra blades. With your wind affinity, those chakra kunai will be devastating. Kakashi also taught Naruto a new jutsu. You are already familiar with futon, daitopper, wind release, great breakthrough. I am going to show you a modification of this technique. Naruto jumped in the air with excitement, a new jutsu. The clone's visible eye twitched. He doubted he would ever get used to Naruto's UN shinobi-like behavior. He also doubted he could break him of the habit without breaking the boy completely down. Kakashi clapped his palms together. Futon, Repusho, wind release, gale palm, a burst of wind pushed out from around Kakashi in all directions. Naruto was shoved backward a dozen feet but landed agilely. This attack, unlike daitopper, has a 360-degree arc. Using this will allow you to stop projectiles from all directions. You can also use it as a surprise in close quarters, but it doesn't have the destructive potential of daitopper. Naruto eagerly made a score of clones and began practicing. As always, Kakashi was amazed at the sheer level of chakra Naruto had. Most shinobi, including himself, had to be cautious of using too much ninjutsu. Naruto had just left the academy and had chakra reserves that surpass most jonin. While he'd started at pathetically abysmal levels, it had grown much better. The shadow clone technique had got Naruto's chakra control to appropriate levels in a fraction of the time it would otherwise have taken. Overall, Kakashi was very pleased with the progress of Team 7. He didn't want to interrupt their training too much by tackling missions away from the village. However, he did want them to have more exposure to real shinobi missions. For the next 2 days he would train them hard, and he would scan the mission list for anything that was relatively close by that was a C or B rank. Normally no genin would be going on B rankings, but he knew he could convince the old man that his team could handle it. In all honesty, any B rank would be a piece of cake for Kakashi to solo. His mission success rate on missions was quite nearly flawless. Regardless of rank, the important part of the mission was that it be close to Konoha. It was difficult to train at the level he demanded his team to train at on the road. As was typical, Kakashi completed his own training after Team 7 split. Kakashi practiced what he preached. He would place his own chakra weights and continue to hone his own body. He also liked to experiment with jutsu combinations and find new uses for them. After 3 hours of training, he cooled down and drifted on to rest. Kakashi felt good about his team's progress and eagerly looked forward to see how his 3 genin would develop. The next few days were marked by rigorous training. Naruto and Sasuke threw themselves into their training routine with a vigor that surprised even Kakashi. Both of them had felt that the mission to the Land of Waves had slowed down their training because they couldn't push themselves to exhaustion every day. With the weights on, they would run miles, do hundreds of push-ups, crunches and exhausting calisthenics. Their jutsu training wasn't slacking off either. Sasuke had the Kaidori down perfectly and Naruto had mastered the futon, repusho, wind release, gale palm. Naruto could summon the chakra and race through the hand seals in under a second. Even blunt kunai that Kakashi threw at him at combat speed could be countered with the jutsu. Sakura continued her conditioning but wasn't as crazed as the 2 boys were. Instead, her focus was on genjutsu. She drank up the additional training Kakashi had provided, and she was close to pulling off the Magen, Kokoni Arazu no Jutsu, demonic illusion, false surroundings technique. The C-ranked jutsu was rarely used in combat but was often used as part of the security around a shinobi camp while they traveled. Kakashi had used the jutsu while the team had traveled to and from the Land of Waves as an extra security precaution. Kakashi had pored over potential missions that were near Konoha. One particular one caught his eye. There was a rank C mission that had a group of bandits that had made their base only 2 days out from Konoha. What made the mission interesting was that the bandits had operated there for some time but only recently had become bold and actually attacking heavily armed caravans. The only reason it was listed as a rank C mission was because no shinobi had been identified as part of the band. The Jonin knew that something had to explain the bandits' new aggression. By scanning the other missions, he gave it a high probability that a missing nin had joined the band. This missing nin wasn't foolish enough to use jutsu in combat and draw attention to himself. Kakashi reviewed the list of missing nin that had recently left their villages and identified a likely candidate. A Chunin-level shinobi from Takegakure, Hidden Waterfall Village, was the most likely candidate. According to the most recent bingo book, he was a skilled Chunin possessing higher than average tactical talent. Tomonori did not have any documented elemental affinities or skill with ninjutsu. He was however quite skilled in taijutsu and kenjutsu. Takegakure had a mission listed as a B rank, the return of Tomonori alive. Bringing him alive would be worth 3 times the paltry bounty that was currently listed for him. Interesting, could be several reasons for this, ranging from a relative in a position of power, or he has information that someone in Takegakure needs. Team 7's goal would be to make the capture and wipe out the bandits, completing a rank B and C mission at the same time. Kakashi didn't particularly care about the additional income, but it would prove a solid lesson on being aware of what was happening. A simple C-rank mission had led to Zabuza, and now another C-rank mission would lead to Tomonori, who was no Zabuza but would be much more dangerous than bandits. Kakashi informed his team of the mission, both parts of it. Officially they were only going on a C-ranked mission, however Kakashi's instincts told him he would find the missing Chunin with the bandits. He explained the reasoning to his team and they looked excited. Even Sakura was eager to get out there. The fact that they were to bring the Chunin back alive was even better in her mind. Bright and early the next morning, Team 7 was ready to go. They removed the chakra seals on their weights. Kakashi meant for them to travel light and fast. After leaving sight of Konoha, they began racing through the trees. As was typical, Naruto's clones surrounded their formation, giving the team an added layer of security as they traveled at near top speed. The plan was to push as far as they could on the first day, allowing them to hit the bandits on the evening of the second day. Finding the bandits would be very simple. That many people made tracks in an area that everyone but Naruto would be able to locate. And even Naruto, who had missed that lesson in the academy, could just flood the area with clones until the bandits were found. That night Sakura helped with the camp's protections. She used Magen, Kokoni Arazu no Jutsu, demonic illusion, false surroundings technique, to hide their presence. Kakashi gave her a nod of approval. Very impressive, Sakura, you captured all of the details perfectly. Most Chunin don't make their genjutsu techniques that flawless. Kakashi of course was thinking of the Chunin exam trick on the wrong floor to weed out genin who weren't ready. That genjutsu was not nearly as detailed as the one Sakura had just completed. Sakura beamed at the compliment, proud that she was useful to her team. It was even nicer that Sasuke-kun was in earshot when Kakashi had recognized her. The night passed without incident, and with Team 7's speed they were able to get to the bandit-infested area by noon. Kakashi was the first to spot the tracks of a large group, and he had his team follow. Soon enough they spotted the bandits camped in the distance. Based on the number of tents, the band numbered about 70 to 80 criminals. Kakashi told Sasuke to use his Sharingan to see if he could spot their quarry. Sasuke took a careful look and then whispered to the team, I didn't spot him, but one of the tents has a genjutsu over it. I'm betting that's where Tomonori is. All right Sasuke, you know the mission parameters. Kill or capture the majority of the bandits and capture the waterfall missing nin alive. You make the plan and we will execute. Sasuke didn't see this mission as too difficult, however he knew Kakashi would be testing him. Sasuke would have loved to test himself against Tomonori, but that wasn't how Kakashi liked to do things. He wanted the mission completed with minimal risk. Here is the plan. Kakashi, you have the best stealth abilities. You'll sneak a clone into the camp and wait for us to make our move. Naruto, you'll flood the area with about 50 clones. Make sure they stay far enough away not to draw attention. In 10 we'll let the clones charge out. Then the 4 of us will advance and eliminate any pockets of strong resistance. Kakashi gave Sasuke an eye smile. The plan was exactly what he wanted Sasuke to do. He was under no illusions that this was Sasuke's preferred way of doing things, but he would settle for his acquiescence. Naruto made the required number of clones, and they began to fan out. As of yet the bandit camp had not been alerted of the imminent attack. The Kakashi clone easily slipped into the camp and waited by the tent with the genjutsu on it. The attack began with a tide of orange katana wielding Naruto screaming their heads off. The bandits were shocked but quickly drew weapons. Blades, spears, and a few bows were their primary weapons. Bandits were often made up of failed genin. Some were dropouts from the academy. Others were disgraced samurai or just village toughs. The failed genin were perhaps the most dangerous, but disgraced samurai depending on their skill with the blade could also pose a challenge. It became immediately clear to Team 7 however that the majority were trash. Most of the bandits never even got a blow in. The Naruto clones had almost as much speed and skill as the original. And despite being new to the blade he was simply faster than his opponents. A perfectly executed cross-cut could be dodged before the blade even came close. The counterattack by the Naruto clone would either be a fatal stab, slice or a non-fatal bludgeoning with the hilt to the head. There were however a few isolated areas of resistance. One area had a samurai who wielded his blade with enough skill and speed to dissipate a clone. Naruto pointed him out and Team 7 literally blew him away with their jutsu combination. Sasuke and Naruto's wind-fire combo actually popped a half-dozen more clones but ended the samurai's disgraced existence in a fiery explosion. Meanwhile, the Kakashi clone saw its prey exit the tent. The clone sprung out at top speed. To Tomonori's credit, he actually blocked the first attack with a hasty draw of his blade. He instantly used the substitution jutsu to get away, but the Sharingan saw it all. Kakashi instantly used the body flicker technique to stay right on top of the Chunin. Tomonori slashed with impressive speed and strength, but it was to no avail. The attack was parried with a kunai, and then Kakashi was on him. He grasped the waterfall nin's neck and applied pressure to the carotid artery. Tomonori knew he only had moments before he lost consciousness. His struggles were in vain, and soon he collapsed unconscious. The rest of the bandits broke and fled, scattering in all directions. They ran headlong into the Naruto clones that had circled the camp. A few escaped, but the vast majority were killed or incapacitated. After everything was taken care of, they had a band of prisoners they would need to march to the local police force. They kept Tomonori unconscious with a mild coma-inducing poison that Kakashi had concocted. Sakura asked if they would be going to Takegakure to drop off the missing Chunin. Kakashi shook his head. Negative, the mission was originated from there, but drop-off points included our village since we are allied with them. I don't intend to take you to any of the other villages right now. Even if we are at peace right now, it doesn't mean there aren't shinobi spying on each other. We believe we know who watches Konoha, but our intelligence is limited with Takegakure. They team accepted this and proceeded to drop off their prisoners and then return home to Konoha. That evening Naruto had difficulties sleeping. The deaths of the bandits were necessary, and it was done in the heat of battle, but the sheer number, and the burnt bodies afterwards. Just thinking about it made him nauseous. Kakashi saw the boys in a turmoil and addressed it. You know what you did was necessary. Hi Kakashi-sensei, but I can't get it out of my head. They attacked me and Sasuke hit them with, it burned them so badly. I remember when you first showed us the attack, I was so excited to use it in a real battle. Now that I have? I almost wish I never learned it. Kakashi let the boy's words hang in the air. Naruto punched the ground. Why do I feel this way? They were murderers and scum, they deserved what they got. They killed people, they tried to kill us, what we did was good. The elite Jonin thought about his words and then answered, you're human, Naruto. You have compassion for other people. As long as it doesn't interfere with your missions, that's fine. Like I told Sakura, it gets easier, just make sure that you never come to enjoy the killing. Naruto had a shocked look on his face. Who could enjoy that? Kakashi grunted, you'd be surprised. What we do puts strain our minds, it affects people in different ways. Some turn to drink to suppress their memories. Others cease to care about anyone not from their village. Others revel in the power they have. Some say a good shinobi have no emotions. I disagree. Emotional decision-making on the battlefield is foolish, but to be without emotions is to cease to be human. Naruto wrapped his arms around his own shoulders and shivered. Naruto had wished to deaden his feelings when he thought about the burning agony he inflicted on his enemies. But the way Kakashi said the word human resonated with him. If he stopped feeling, stopped caring, would he become the demon the villagers thought he was? Naruto dug into the core of his being and pulled out the determination and never give up attitude that defined him. I won't lose my emotions, Kakashi-sensei. But I won't quit either. I'm going to be the next Hokage. Kakashi smiled beneath his mask. Naruto was going to be just fine. Both he and Sakura were accepting of the harsh reality that was shinobi life. You killed people. He wasn't concerned about Sasuke. Sasuke had experienced death up close and personal when his entire clan was massacred. The deaths of others would not bother him unless he had a close bond. Kakashi considered this an actual asset to shinobi life, as long he did form those close bonds with the team. Kakashi wasn't a fool. He knew Sasuke was doing what he wanted in order to get more training and not out of his own personal desire. Going to the ramen stand with his teammates was just a way for Sasuke to show he was willing to play ball. Kakashi was willing to give it time, but he was also in quandary. The quickest way to form close bonds is to truly depend on the team. Sasuke needed to save his teammates in battle, he needed his comrades to save Sasuke. That is how lifelong bonds of friendship and trust were forged between shinobi. However, Kakashi was unwilling to put their lives at risk at this early juncture. The more often someone's life was at risk, the more likely they were to die, a fairly straightforward perspective. Kakashi's goal was to bring that chance to as close to nil as possible. One day Kakashi would not be able to watch over them during a mission. One day they would have to face threats that would demand Kakashi's full attention, but he needed them trained up before he would allow those risks to occur. It was a dilemma with no immediate cure. The journey home was quick and Team 7 was praised for their good work. Kakashi did not include in the mission report that Team 7 knew they were completing a B-ranked mission ahead of time. He also left out the elemental jutsus his team used. He did verbally inform the third Hokage of all the actual details. Hiruzen wasn't pleased that Kakashi had sent his team out on a probable B-ranked mission, but considering how it turned out, there really wasn't much of a risk with Kakashi personally handling the tune-in. Team 7 now officially had over a dozen D-ranked missions under their belts, 1 C-ranked mission, 1 B-ranked mission, and 1 A-ranked mission. For a fresh genin team, that was rather unorthodox. Granted, both times they had officially set off on C-ranked missions. One had remained a C-rank mission that was done in tandem with the rank B retrieval mission. The other C-ranked mission was removed as a C-rank and made an A-rank due to Zabuza's presence. With his team safely back within Konoha, it was time for even more training. Kakashi would keep his team within the village for the next 2 weeks for some heavy training. The paths for each of the genin were laid out in his mind. Naruto would improve his blade work while continuing to rapidly increase his weight to maximize his speed and strength. While he pushed his body to its limit over and over again each day, his clones would be working to refine his chakra control even further. Sakura was to master at least one combat-worthy genjutsu. Megan, Narakumi no Jutsu. Demonic illusion, hell viewing technique, was not useful against shinobi, though it was handy against non-shinobi threats. And for testing fresh out of the academy genins, Kakashi wryly thought. Once Sakura mastered strong genjutsu, his team could easily and quickly take out threats. If she could hold the enemy in the genjutsu for just a couple of seconds, the kill could be delivered with the fire-air jutsu combination or even a close-in Kaidori from Sasuke. Beyond the genjutsu focus, Sakura would also work on improving her taijutsu. No one expected a genjutsu user to fight well in hand-to-hand. While she would never be as good as Naruto or Sasuke, it was still a needed skill for her. Sasuke now had enough chakra to successfully use the shadow clone technique, though he would only be able to create one clone and the lifespan was short. It would never be the training technique for him as it was for Naruto. However, Kakashi wanted Sasuke to use it in combat. Being able to deliver a front-line attack with a clone while you stayed back was just common sense in Kakashi's book. It would also be a good training tool in the fact the Sasuke clone could watch Sasuke spar, and then when it dissipated, Sasuke would be able to reflect on how he performed from his own perspective. Kakashi would also be training Sasuke's body hard. The Sharingan allowed Sasuke to see Jonin-level movement easily. Now his body just needed to keep up with his eyes. Plan in place for his 3 genin. Kakashi decided to enjoy a few rounds with some of his former comrades in ANBU. He wasn't particularly close to any of them, but they had served together doing the most treacherous and dangerous missions. While they couldn't go into details, they could certainly enjoy the quiet, and not so quiet depending on who was there, companionship. The Jonin of Team 7 was impressed with his charge progress. In the 2 weeks since returning from their second mission outside of the walls of Konoha, they had met the goals of the 2-week training he designed. Naruto's skill with the blade was now passable. While not truly impressive, it was all that was needed to still be frighteningly effective. Without his weights, he simply moved with enough speed that even when faced with someone with greater skill, he would have the advantage purely from speed. Kakashi was under no illusion that Naruto could handle a Jonin weapon master, but he would put his money on Naruto to defeat most Chunin in a Kenjutsu duel. That was before he abused the Kage Bunshin to create a swarm of viciously fast katana-wielding clones. Naruto's chakra control had continued to improve through his clones. He is an impressive shinobi. I can only imagine at what level he would have been if he hadn't been stunted through malnourishment and neglect all his life. Sasuke had mastered the shadow clone technique, and the insight the clone provided him after watching him spar was quite beneficial. The young genius rarely made mistakes as it is, but now he corrected them after every spar. Sasuke still lacked the speed to keep up with his eyes, but one couldn't expect to become an A-ranked shinobi in just a month or 2. The steady improvement was sufficient. Sakura lacked a Jinchuriki's massive chakra or the incredible powers of a dojutsu, but she was still progressing into a fine shinobi. Despite the massively unfair advantage Sasuke's Sharingan gave him, he actually had to work to pin Sakura down. Her taijutsu movements were fluid and constantly shifting away from the fight at odd angles. Sakura was also becoming effective with using simple tricks at gaining distance. The pink-haired genin used Makibishi, Kawarimi, and natural agility to avoid Sasuke for several minutes in one spar, much to the raven-haired boy's frustration. Her chief achievement, however, was the mastery of a genjutsu that could distract or even capture a trained shinobi. The genjutsu masked itself as a right-on element attack. His student would flash through hand seals and shout right-on, mahi, lighting release, paralysis. At that point, lightning would appear to surround her opponent, sending electric shocks that caused their muscles to spasm and hold them in place. In actuality, it was Megan, Genkaku Mahi, demonic illusion, illusionary paralysis, a surprisingly effective genjutsu. Kakashi had laughed when Naruto was first caught in the genjutsu. In between his foe's screams of pain, the illusion created some pain, but not to the extent he had been screaming. He had yelled, "What? Sakura has 2 different elemental jutsu, I want to learn too." All the while he was completely paralyzed, and Sakura just had to tap him on the base of his neck with her kunai to win the spar. At the time it was humorous, but shortly thereafter he realized Naruto needed work on escaping genjutsu. Kakashi had spent some time with him learning the Kai release process. With his chakra reserves all but the most dangerous genjutsu should be disrupted. Of course, the problem with genjutsu was realizing you were under it in the first place, which meant Naruto still had a ways to go. On the positive side, Sakura's illusion was nearly perfect. She used the hand signs for an existing right-hand jutsu, but turned it into a genjutsu. Only someone very skilled with chakra detection would be able to determine she was not changing the chakra nature to lightning. Alternatively, they could counter the perceived lighting attack with their own jutsu. When their attack failed to do anything, it might tip them off that they were under a genjutsu. While it wasn't perfect, it was a potentially lethal surprise, and with the speed Naruto and Sasuke had as well as the power of their combined jutsu, it was precisely the sort of jutsu that filled the needed support role in Team 7. Kakashi thought about his team as he reported to the Hokage Tower. He knew what the meeting was about. It was time for the semi-annual Chunin exams. His team was already Chunin in terms of raw taijutsu and ninjutsu abilities. While they lacked experience, their teamwork was quite formidable. While he wouldn't want his team to face a team of seasoned Chunin from an opposing village in the field 3-on-3, he wouldn't have bet against the 3 genin. Several of the other jonin were there before Kakashi, but he was not late. The last jonin instructor arrived and the Sandaime Hokage made his announcement. In 7 days the Chunin exams would be hosted. Genin from several villages would compete for the Chunin rank. The Hokage ticked off the villages: Sunagakure, Sand, Omegakure, Rain, Takagakure, Waterfall, Kusagakure, Grass, and even a team from a newly founded village, Otogakure, Sound. Kakashi kept a broad knowledge base of the hidden villages but had not yet heard of Otogakure. They must be extremely new then, Kakashi thought. The Hokage then asked which Jonin senseis were going to recommend their team take the Chunin exams. The Jonin instructors began to declare their teams ready. Gari enthusiastically proclaimed his team was ready and that the team would impress everyone with the power of youth. When it came down to the rookie 9, Asuma spoke first. My team needs to get some motivation. He took a puff from his cigarette and continued, Team 10 is in. There was some surprise at the announcement. Most Jonin did not have their teams participate at the first possible chance after graduating from the academy. Kurenai looked at Kakashi, who was silent and unreadable behind his mask. She wasn't sure if her team was fully ready, but their teamwork was excellent. With the way the Chunin exams were going to be set up this year, a tracker team would have a distinct advantage in navigating the forest of death. Seeing that Kakashi was waiting for her answer, she spoke up, Team 8 will participate. More murmurings could be heard. All eyes then turned to Kakashi. Kakashi shrugged his shoulders, it's too early for my team, Team 7 will not compete. The Hokage almost dropped his pipe. Gari looked at his rival. He was surprised and a bit disappointed, as he would have loved to see his genin compete with Kakashi's. Iruka loudly stated, finally a jonin with some sense. What are you two thinking, putting your teams through the Chunin exams so soon? Asuma chuckled, it will be a good test for the team. Iruka shook his head and made to speak up again, but Kakashi interjected, Iruka, they are no longer your students, they are our soldiers, it is not your place to challenge this decision. Iruka subsided and the Hokage dismissed everyone except for Kakashi. Kakashi waited and Hiruzen sighed heavily and asked just one question. Why? The son of the White Fang responded, I see no need for my team to be promoted to Chunin. I have no desire for additional leadership responsibilities to be given to them at this time. This team will be a combat team and should stay together for several years. Being Chunin won't change anything for them, so why should I disrupt their training regime for a meaningless title? Sarutabi muttered, the council won't see it that way. They will question your ability to train. No one with any sense can doubt your combat prowess, but they will claim you are not capable of being an effective sensei. Kakashi was not moved by that argument. You are the Hokage, you have final authority on the shinobi force disposition. The council cannot and will not remove me as the Team 7 jonin. They can make things difficult, Kakashi. Do you not think this would be a good opportunity for your team to prove themselves out from under your shadow? Kakashi shook his head, they will have plenty more opportunities in the future. I also don't want anyone to realize the potential threat Naruto and Sasuke are. A spectacle in front of an audience may lead to attacks to nip their budding potential. While I am confident in my abilities to keep them safe, I cannot be with them at all times. The third Hokage sighed. A headache was already beginning to form at the thought of meeting with an angry council demanding the last Uchiha participate. Very well, Kakashi, I will not override your decision. Kakashi bowed respectfully, thank you, Hokage-sama. Sarutabi nursed his pipe. It would have been better if none of the rookie 9 had participated. But with teams 8 and 10 selected for the Chunin exam, the council may very well riot. I hope you know what you are doing, Kakashi. Team Gaara had arrived in Konohagakure early for the Chunin exams. Gaara had to suppress the bloodlust flowing through him. He longed to kill in the name of his mother, to prove his existence against blood that was worthy. But he had to wait. The waiting filled him with rage, but outwardly his appearance never changed. His siblings were wary of him for good reason. He was Gaara the Jinchuuriki of Sunagakure. The Naruto clone that was currently under a henge to look like a villager saw the 3 Sunanin. The three looked competent and moved with the practiced ease of an experienced shinobi. The one with the red hair sent a shiver down its spine. There was something very off about him. Naruto was by no means an expert in reading people, but he had two clones just wander and observe shinobi and villagers each day. He started to pick up people's mannerisms, the way they looked when they were lying or when they were scared or angry. What he was picking up here was quite odd. The two taller siblings were very wary about their red-haired leader. Wary wasn't quite the word either. More like outright terror that they had learned to live with. The Naruto clone decided to follow for a bit. Naruto wasn't highly skilled at stealth, but he had picked up a number of tricks from his sensei. This meant it was a surprise when the red-haired boy stopped and turned looking directly at him. Sand flowed around him and his voice was low and direct. "Why are you following me?" The disguise was that of a civilian villager. The clone responded saying, "You look new in town, I was curious." Gaara merely responded, "Stop or I will kill you." The threat was made so matter-of-fact that it stunned the clone. An outside shinobi threatening a Konoha citizen with death for being curious. Naruto decided not to press the issue but would report it to Kakashi when he dispelled. Ino was irritated with her one-time friend and now rival. Though her opinion of Sasuke was damaged, she had rationalized that maybe he had been in a bad mood that day. Having to get stuck with Naruto and the forehead would drive even the kindest of souls to distraction. The reason she was irritated with Sakura was because Sakura still hadn't come home. The sun was already setting and she wanted to find out if Team 7 was also going to be in the Chunin exams. Where could she be? Just when Ino was about ready to give up and head home herself, she saw the pink-haired Kunoichi turn toward her home. Ino huffed and crossed her arms and said, "Where have you been?" Sakura was a bit taken aback by the sudden question. She hadn't agreed to meet with Ino today, so why was she blaming her? "I was training." "Why?" Ino looked surprised. "Training? This late in the day?" Sakura nodded. "I want to get better and be useful to my Sasuke-kun." Ino gave a condescending laugh. "My Sasuke-kun doesn't need any help from you." Sakura rolled her eyes. "Why are you here anyway?" Ino huffed again and said, "I just wanted to see if your team is also going to be part of the Chunin exams." Sakura shook her head. "Chunin exams? Kakashi-sensei hasn't told us anything about that." "Wait, are you saying your team is going to participate?" Ino stood a little bit straighter. "We sure are. I guess you and Naruto are dragging down Sasuke-kun so badly your sensei didn't nominate you." She sighed dramatically. "I feel so awful for Sasuke, having to put up with you two." Sakura had the urge to kick her friend in her haughty face. "You don't know anything, Ino. Just go." Ino had not wanted to start a fight. She had secretly hoped that Team 7 would also be in the exams. At that point there was no easy way to save face, so she just harumphed and stalked off. That didn't go very well. I really shouldn't have been so mad that she made me wait. She didn't even know I was coming. Oh well. Sakura had gained some perspective and, to be honest, she had missed her friend. Kakashi-sensei taught his students to see underneath and then look underneath the underneath. That type of dedication and awareness to one's surroundings had made one thing painfully clear to Sakura. Sasuke hated fangirls. The way she and Ino had acted had filled the boy with contempt for them, not love. And the way they competed with each other had driven in a wedge between her and Ino, her first friend. At the moment Sakura was too tired to even think about it. She just wanted to eat and collapse asleep. Her training kept intensifying more and more, and she knew despite all of her hard work her two teammates were pushing themselves even harder. "I will be strong, not just for my Sasuke-kun, but for Naruto and everyone in the village." Team 7 met the following morning. Naruto immediately reported the strange genin from Suna to Kakashi. Kakashi was a bit surprised. "He actually threatened to murder you in broad daylight if you kept following him?" Naruto nodded. Kakashi had a few theories on this. Either the boy was braggart who was all bark and no bite, a borderline psychopath, or extremely powerful beyond that of most genin. "Good work, Naruto. I'll make sure we keep eyes on him while in the village. Security has been increased due to the exams, so the ANBU forces are a bit stretched, but it will be doable." I'll also see if I can dig up any information on him and his team. Sasuke had not realized the Chunin exams were here. He had focused solely on his training and had for the most part ignored events occurring in the village. Are we going to be competing in the Chunin exams, Kakashi-sensei? Sasuke kept an even tone, but he longed to participate. The training surpassed his expectations, but he had a strong desire to fight without being babysat by his sensei. Kakashi looked at Sasuke and asked, "What do you think?" Sasuke took the challenge for what it was and replied, "Yes, we are ready." Kakashi just looked at Sasuke impassively. Sasuke was shinobi trained, he didn't fidget, but he was uncomfortable by Kakashi's flat look. Kakashi allowed the silence to drag on for a minute before he finally replied, "Tell me what you really think." My actual guess is that we aren't all part of your plan to have us be underneath any notice," Sasuke finished in a frustrated tone. Kakashi condescendingly clapped his hands. "The logic is simple to follow, Sasuke. By following through with my plan you are better positioned to avenge your family and rebuild your clan. And yet you are still angry with the decision. Explain yourself, shinobi." Sasuke forced himself to keep a respectful tone. "I have no way of knowing how I compare to others. I need to know I am the best, because if I'm not I need to find out how I can be the best, otherwise I'll never do what I need to." Kakashi scratched his mask as he answers, "So comparing yourself to the weakest of the shinobi ranks will determine if your skills are where they need to be." Quit twisting my words. I need to prove myself." Sasuke's respectful tone had left rather swiftly. Sakura was concerned at the heat coming from her Sasuke-kun's voice. He was angry and his frustration was boiling over. "You don't need to do anything, Sasuke. You are a soldier under my command. You have been a shinobi of this village for less than 6 months. Do you think this is the only opportunity you will receive? You want to compete because of your pride, not because you have coldly analyzed the advantages and negatives for competing." Sasuke wanted to retort, but Kakashi held up his hand. "It is that kind of thinking that makes me certain you are not ready for the Chunin exams. Yes, this team would probably crush all of the other genin teams out there. So what? Being a Chunin is more than just your ability to fight, it is also about making the right decisions. You are allowing your pride and emotions to cloud your judgment. You aren't ready to become a Chunin." Sasuke forced himself to calm down. Kakashi was always testing him. If he blew up at him he would just be validating Kakashi's decision. A shinobi did not yell at his superior. Sasuke took in a deep breath. "Thank you for clarifying your decision. I see that you are correct and I respect your decision." Kakashi moved with every ounce of his speed. If Sasuke had his Sharingan active he would be able to see the movement, but even then it was doubtful he could have stopped the blow. Kakashi slammed his fist into Sasuke's stomach, driving the wind completely out of him. He lifted the genin off the ground with the blow, and then while the boy was still in midair he hit him with a spinning heel kick that sent Sasuke crashing into a tree. Sasuke gasped like a fish for air. He crumpled toward the ground only to be caught by Kakashi by the front of his shirt. Kakashi pinned him to the tree and fixed him a one-eyed glare. "I told you not to lie to me, Sasuke. On our very first day of training I told you not to put up a false front. Disagree with me if you like, but do not attempt to deceive me. You don't respect my decision. I can sense your deception even before you spoke." Sakura gasped at the harsh treatment Sasuke-kun was receiving. However, she knew interfering would only embarrass him and solve nothing. Naruto kept his expression even and did his best to avoid moving at all. Sasuke got his breathing under control. "What do you want from me then?" Kakashi released him and backed up, giving the boy some space. "I want your honesty as well as the appropriate level of respect. I don't expect you to agree with my decisions if you disagree with them. I would have accepted something as simple as "I disagree, sensei, and will do my best to prove myself in the next 6 months. Kakashi paused. "Instead you choose to lie and pretend I had convinced you of my decision. I am here to train your chakra, body and mind. Do not parrot words you think I want to hear. State your case cleanly and respectful, but never lie to me or your team." Sasuke was angry at himself now. Kakashi had warned him about this before. He was only worsening his position. The decision had already been finalized. All he had done was earn the ire of the person best suited to train him. I apologize, Kakashi-sensei, I should not have lied to you. Kakashi turned to the other two. And what about you two? What are your thoughts on not being able to compete in the Chunin exams? Naruto answered first. I'm disappointed, Kakashi-sensei. I see the value in keeping strength hidden, but it's hard to see my classmates compete while I'm stuck on the sideline. Sakura chimed in, I think I need more training anyway. Naruto and Sasuke are ahead of me, and I'd probably ruin their chances against the experienced teams anyway. Naruto responded, no way, Sakura-chan. That's not how a team works. You play a support role. It's not expected for you to go toe-to-toe with the front-line components of the team. The three shinobi stared at Naruto. Naruto rubbed the back of head sheepishly. What? I read it in 2 different books on the appropriate roles for a combat team. This team has 3 ninjutsu itaijutsu specialists, a 4th wouldn't add any synergy. Having a genjutsu specialist is even better than another frontline fighter. I can show you the book if you don't believe me. Kakashi couldn't help but laugh. Naruto, it's fine, thank you for supporting your teammate. Sakura, I have no doubts this team could handle the Chunin exams, but by doing so everyone would see the team's abilities. That is my concern. Seeing that the team needed some cheering up, he said, since you are not in the Chunin exams, that gives us time to do a C-ranked mission. That did brighten the team's disposition as their sensei began to explain what they would be doing. Hinata Hyuga was nervous. Her team had entered the Chunin exams, and she did not want to let Kiba and Shino down. The test in front of her scared her. They would pass and fail as a team. Thankfully her dojutsu was perfect for this type of exam. She located someone confidently writing answers and copied them with her Byakugan. She had already finished the 9 questions on the exam, and that left her time to think. She had not seen Naruto-kun in the exam area. That must mean Naruto's team was not selected for the Chunin exams. If they aren't ready, how am I ready? All of the genin in here are older and wiser than us. I know Kiba and Shino have worked very hard, but I'm going to bring them down. Hinata was working herself up to greater heights of worry and anxiety as the minutes of the exam trickled down. Ibiki Marino then introduced the 10th question. Hinata gasped. If she got the last answer wrong, Kiba and Shino could never become Chunin. As long as someone wrote the answer down, she would just copy it, but what if it was different? This question was a curveball. Maybe there was another twist. Maybe each person had a different question that was given to them. Hinata was sure that Shino would pass, but she also worried about Kiba, who didn't have a skill to help him copy answers like she and Shino did. And even if we all answer the question correctly, I'm still way out of my league here. I can't ruin Kiba and Shino's careers. I have to raise my hand. Perhaps if there had been someone to distract her from these thoughts in the exam room, things would have gone differently. But without that distraction, Hinata raised her hand and her team was dismissed. Shino inclined his head toward Hinata. While disappointed, he knew she had acted based on a desire to help her team. Kiba was not so understanding. Kiba growled, "What the hell were you thinking, Hinata? We failed the test because you were too scared. You're pathetic." Hinata bowed her head in shame at her teammate's angry words. Shino put a hand on Kiba and said, "Enough." Kiba pushed Shino's hand away and stalked out of the building furiously. Thank you, Shino-san," Hinata stuttered out. The Aburame simply nodded and walked with Hinata as they went to find their Jonin instructor. Shikamaru saw teammate leave and was tempted to follow course. While he knew there was no 10th question, it sure would be a drag to have to continue competing in the Chunin exams. While he was considering the pros and cons to not having to do the exam versus Aino's shrill screams, the proctor announced they pass. How troublesome. Team 7 returned from a rather simple C-ranked mission on the 5th day of the Chunin exams. They would be allowed to watch the preliminary bouts that the survivors of the Forest of Death had to fight before the 3rd portion of the exam. The other genin would not know they were there, as they would be behind a false wall above the 2nd tier of the battle area. It was a blatant favoritism shown to Team 7. However, the Hokage could see the advantage of having sharing and observers pick up any jutsu that was used. Kakashi was a regular observer to most Chunin and Jonin exams. Hiruzen saw little reason to exclude the rest of Team 7 when Kakashi made his request. Sasuke had given thought to his spat with Kakashi and realized he really had acted like an idiot. Kakashi was remarkably straightforward with his team. He clearly outlined what he expected of them at every turn. Work as a team. Train hard. Don't lie to him or each other. Hide your strength. Work as a team. Kill swiftly when required. Don't take chances. His sensei had succulently explained why these were of vital importance. It all followed a logical pattern. All Sasuke had to do was follow the instructions and he would be granted power through training a new jutsu. And twice now he had risked his sensei's wrath. Why? Why would he risk one of the great assets he had at his disposal? The training and support of the Leaf's most elite jonin. The shinobi who had copied a 1000 jutsu. Kakashi taught him to analyze himself with the Kage Bunshin, and at the same time he taught him to analyze his own actions and the reasons for them. Why did Sasuke care about competing in the Chunin exams? He wanted to say it was because he needed to find out how strong he was. He wanted to say that it would allow him to test himself against other powerful shinobi. But looking inwardly proved that false. Kakashi had taught him to see things as they are not as he wanted them to be. He faced the truth. He wanted to revel in victory, personal victory, not just a victory for his team. He wanted to stand triumphant, to have other people acknowledge his power, the power of the Uchiha clan. With this new piece of self-discovery he considered its importance compared to the stated goals he had. Destroying Itachi and rebuilding the Uchiha clan. If his third goal was pride and adulation of the village, was it more important than his initial two goals? No, it isn't, it's pure vanity. Realizing this didn't mean it wasn't a desire for Sasuke. He would bring pride to the name Uchiha, he would be the Uchiha most remembered by history. But he should also go about it in a way that maximized his chances. The Sharingan did not make him invincible, he could be killed in battle before he achieved any of his three goals. If the world knew that he had an unlocked Sharingan, he could be the target of ambitious villages like Iwa or Kumo. If they wished to war with Konoha in the future, it would be in their best interest to eliminate a true heir of the Uchiha clan. Kakashi had showered them with stories of powerful shinobi with vast potential who were cut down before their prime. Sasuke shook his head, trying to clear his thoughts. He thought so different now than he had a few months ago. It was almost like he was a different person. The overt analysis of every action he made, the actions of those around him, and the potential ramifications of everything he thought or did gave him a new outlook. In a way it was exhausting, but he knew it made him stronger. He cleared his head and ordered his priorities. Kill Itachi. That was still more important than rebuilding his clan or showcasing his power to the village. After that was rebuilding his clan. And finally it was to showcase his talent to Konoha and the world. Kakashi-sensei had been right about everything so far. He would follow his game plan and become stronger. When the time was right and Team 7 was disbanded, he would do things differently, but he would keep the lessons Kakashi had taught him. Mind clear and ready to fulfill his role, he walked in with the rest of Team 7 to stand with his sensei behind the false wall. He listened to the Hokage's brief speech and saw Kabuto's choice to remove himself from the Chunin exam. That left 14 genin. Too many for the finals, and it was decided that there would be a series of 6 battles, with 2 byes that would automatically progress to the final rounds. This would leave 8 contestants to fight in the last stage. The contestants were mostly from Konoha. Gari's team, Team 10, and Kabuto's team made 8 from the Leaf. Team Gaara from Suna was there, as was the team from Oto. Sasuke was interested in seeing how Neji fought. As another dojutsu user, there might be much he could learn from how Neji used his bloodline. The genin also was curious about Gaara. He had heard Naruto's report of the boy and was intrigued. Sasuke grinned at the possibility of learning new jutsu with his Sharingan. He looked intently at the board as the first names populated. The first names displayed Dosu Kanuta versus Temari. Kakashi was curious on the abilities of the Oto Nin. The fight proved to be fairly straightforward and not very interesting. Temari kept her distance against a shinobi with potentially unknown abilities. Dosu tried to close the distance, however Temri used her futon elemental release to drive him back. Dosu became desperate and tried to push forward anyway and was blown clear across the arena and smashed into the wall. A smashed rib punctured his lung and he coughed up blood. Hayate called the match before the Sound Nin died of blood loss. Sakura shook her head and whispered, "Wow, she doesn't mess around." Kakashi wasn't surprised that the Kasekige's daughter was impressive. "I still would place my chips on this team against the Sand siblings, but it would be a close battle. She is definitely Chunin material." While Kakashi mapped out what a potential battle would look like in his head, he watched the electronic board as a new set of names appeared. It turned out to be Yoroi Akado versus Shikamaru Nora. The two opponents walked to the center of the arena. The fight began with Yoroi attempting to get in close. Sasuke had been disappointed by the first fight and hoped some new jutsu would be thrown out. It was not to be. Yoroi tried to close in to absorb the Nora's chakra. Shikamaru countered by backing up and throwing a kunai with an explosive tag attached to it at the ground. Yoroi was able to dodge away, but the blast still lifted him upwards. With Yoroi airborne, it was impossible for him to change his trajectory. Shikamaru simply let his shadow extend and grabbed the older genin. Kabuto's teammate was trapped and now prone on the ground. Shikamaru pulled a kunai from his shin, a place most shinobi would not place a kunai. He then hefted it and made ready to throw. With Yoroi completely paralyzed and mimicking his opponent's moves, he would have no way to counter the attack. He tried to break free of the Kage main no jutsu, but he wouldn't have time. Shikamaru announced, "Either you forfeit or this kunai hits you in the neck." His voice had a cold tone that Naruto was not used to. Did something happen in the Forest of Death, Naruto wondered. Akado had no choice but to surrender and Shikamaru passed on to the next round. Sasuke was rather frustrated at the lack of jutsu being used. The Kage main no jutsu was a result of a bloodline and therefore was not something he could copy. He kept his face impassive as he watched the billboard light up with two new names. Neji Hyuga vs Kintsuchi. Kin looked sour at the matchup while Neji looked confident. Gari shouted, "Neji, showcase the power of your youth." Neji suppressed a sigh as he made ready to advance. Sasuke was very interested in Neji's capabilities. Again he was disappointed in the match. The completely lopsided combat did prove Neji as worthy of a Chunin promotion, at least in terms of ability, but he had not needed to push himself. Projectiles were useless with Neji's dojutsu, and with Kin being a Senbon user the outcome truly was foreordained. After toying with his opponent for a few minutes, he went in close and finished Kin off with his clan's gentle fist fighting style. Kin collapsed on the ground, her chakra points closed and her body bleeding internally. She cursed Neji and then forfeited. Naruto turned to Kakashi. "That was pretty dumb of him, wasn't it?" Kakashi quirked his eyebrow and nodded. Yes, he flaunted his ability when the match could have been decided in seconds. "When you take your exams one day, I expect none of you to needlessly showboat." Sasuke was irritated that he had not been able to see the full extent of the genius of the class his senior. The speed Neji had wasn't at Sasuke's level, but he had no idea if Neji had been holding back against his outclassed opponent. His musings were interrupted by the announcement of the next fight. Ino Yamanaka vs Misumi Tsurugi. 30 seconds was the length of the fight. Misumi used his Nan no Keizo, soft physique modification, to stretch his body around the blonde girl. Ino shrieked as the flesh of her opponent met hers. She was completely grossed out and forfeited the match immediately after her scream. Asuma buried his face in his hands. To be the sensei of a shinobi who had performed that poorly was embarrassing. Sakura felt bad for her one-time friend. That was a rather humiliating way to end Ino's Chunin exam. A shinobi could not afford to be squeamish. On the field there would be far worse things than a malleable body. Sasuke bowed his head toward his sensei. "You were right, challenging myself against this lot would have been worthless." Kakashi looked at the uchiha. "They aren't all that bad. Rock Lee, for example, has been using weights longer than you have and would give you a run for your money in a taijutsu fight even with your Sharingan." This also intrigued Naruto. Weight training had been an incredible boon to his strength and speed. He was excited to see how Lee did in his match. The next match was Tenten vs Zaku. Naruto had to resist the urge to shout out his support for Tenten. While he hadn't had a whole lot of interaction with her, he had deeply appreciated the assistance she had provided in helping him learn which weapon suited him. He silently cheered as the match began. Tenten was a distance fighter and so began the match by hurling a variety of weapons at Zaku. Zaku laughed and responded with his Zankuha, decapitating air waves. The blasts of air and sound from his arms pushed the kunai, shuriken, and other weapons away. Tenten did not let up, she continued to send more and more weapons towards the opponent. Zaku taunted her, "Your weapons are useless, my arms can knock anything down you throw at me." Tenten saw that her attacks were ineffective and decided to go with her ultimate attack. Soshoryu, twin rising dragons, she placed the scrolls in the air and activated her custom-made jutsu. Rising into the air above the smoke, she hurled a ridiculous amount of weapons down at her opponent. Zaku was hard-pressed to keep up, but he was able to scatter the weapons around the arena with rapid and repeated blasts from his arms. Zaku scoffed when the attack was over, "That all you got, little girl?" Tenten kept her face impassive as she manipulated the fallen weapons with the wires that had been attached to them. With incredible skill, she pulled the weapons toward Zaku from multiple directions. Zaku tried to blast them all away, but his defense did not cover all directions. He tried to dodge, but couldn't get out of the way in time, and a kunai buried itself in his side and a shuriken in back of his leg. Zaku cried out with pain. Tenten circled her opponent warily, picking up some of the discarded weapons. Zaku was bleeding from both wounds and tried to hit Tenten with his air waves, but she was out of range. Blood pooled from both wounds, and he could barely stand, let alone chase Tenten down. Tears of frustration and shame filled his eyes, and Hayate asked, "Do you want to forfeit?" Zaku screamed no and tried to rush Tenten in an awkward charge. Naruto looked on with a bit of pity. Clearly Zaku wanted to win desperately. Tenten ran to the side, forcing Zaku to turn to try to close in. With her superior speed, she literally ran a circle around Zaku. The genin from Oto cursed her for a coward and futilely tried to blast her with his arms, but the range was too far to be effective. Tenten knew the wounds were bleeding heavily, the kunai in his side the most significant wound. All she had to do was keep her distance and Zaku would collapse from blood loss. The battles continued on for another 10 minutes before Zaku finally collapsed to the ground defeated. Naruto was happy for Tenten. She had fought strategically even with a horrible disadvantage. When she had the upper hand, she kept her cool and took the sure victory instead of attempting a flashy finish. It was a fight that Kakashi would have been proud of. Guy congratulated Tenten, and the arena was cleared of the weapons before the next match. The next battle would be Choji vs Gaara. Lee caused quite a scene when the board showed the two competitors. It would mean he would not be fighting in the preliminaries. Guy tried to console his student, promising that he would be able to show his youth in the final part of the Chunin exams. With the disruption ended, the match could start. Naruto was anxious as he watched the two make their way to the center. Gaara was bad news, he felt it in his bones. Kakashi was also concerned. He had analyzed the available data on Gaara and had come to the conclusion that the boy was like Naruto, he was a Jinchuuriki. Unlike Naruto, Gaara had little control and was psychotic. The information Konoha had on the missions Gaara completed for Suna showed that he reveled in killing. Choji was a bit unsteady entering the arena. His sensei had promised him barbecue if he had done well, but the boy in front of him unnerved him. Shikamaru had told him not to mess around and to forfeit the instant it was looking bad. He had never seen his laid-back friend so intently serious before, and that was the reason for his nerves. The battle began with Choji using his Baika no Jutsu, multi-size technique. The jutsu expanded Choji's body, which allowed him to better utilize Nikuden Sensho, human bullet tank. Choji turned into a ball and rushed forward, hoping to smash the smaller genin with one attack. Gaara didn't even move. His sand erupted in front of him, stopping the momentum cold. Choji rolled backwards, trying to get even more speed to smash through the sand. Again Gaara made no move, he didn't even blink as the ball smashed into the sand. Pathetic, your blood won't please mother, but I will still take it, Gaara announced as the sand whipped about him in a frenzy. Choji was a bit disoriented from the two failed attacks and tried to hastily back away from the sand. With his disorientated he fell backwards and the sand surged toward him. I forfeit, he screamed. Gaara ignored the announcement and said, Sabaku so-so, sand waterfall funereal. The sand that covered Choji instantly tried to implode the young genin. Gai dashed forward along with Hayate smashing the bulk of the sand away from Choji, however some of the sand was still able to complete the attack. Sand crushed Choji's left leg at knee height. Choji screamed in pain and Hayate angrily said, the match is over, stand down or be disqualified. Gaara stared at the proctor for a moment and then walked back to the sideline. The medical team rushed in to tend to Choji. To Naruto's horror, he could see Choji's lower leg had been completely pulped. Sakura gasped and put her hands up to her face. With her medical training, she knew exactly how bad the damage was. The medics would have no choice, they would have to amputate the leg at the knee. Shikamaru quivered with rage. If Gai and Hayate had moved even a half-second later, his best friend would be dead. Asuma was shocked at the damage, guilt racked him. He hadn't moved to help defend his student because he thought the others were handling it. And now Choji's career as a shinobi could very well be over. Asuma hurried after the medical team. An awkward silence filled the primarily Konoha-filled area. Many of the genin were furious at Gaara for what he had done. Naruto spoke, that bastard, he was going to kill Choji. I'll kill him for this, that's a promise. Kakashi looked at his student. Naruto, think about what you are saying. That is the Kage-kid's son. You killing him could start a war with Suna and would get you executed. What Gaara did was wrong, but within the Chunin exams things like this occur. Naruto ground his teeth in frustration. Choji had been one of the few classmates who hadn't picked on him in the academy. While they had never been close or even spent time outside of the academy, he had appreciated the fact the boy wasn't a bully like so many of the others were. His thoughts were interrupted as the third Hokage began to speak. He spoke about the Chunin exams and what the aspiring genin could expect next. There would be a 1-month delay before the Chunin exams continued. Everyone would know who they would be fighting next, as part of being a Chunin meant researching your opponents and planning ahead. Naruto shook his head in sympathy as Lee cried giant anime tears at not being able to showcase his youth for another full month. The names were called out. In the top half of the bracket, the first match would be Temari vs Neji. The second match would be Gaara vs Misumi. The winner of the first and second match would face each other in the semi-finals after the lower bracket completed their 2 matches. In the second bracket it was Tenten vs Lee. And then Kankuro vs Shikamaru. The winner of these 2 matches would face each other in the semi-finals. The reactions were mixed. Neji and Temari eyed each other but remained impassive. Misumi looked scared while Gaara looked at him with contempt. Tenten and Lee were disappointed that they would have to fight each other. Shikamaru barely paid attention to who he was facing. He was worried about his childhood friend. Up above the second tier of the arena, Sasuke was curious to see how the matches would go. Both Temari and Neji were dominant in their battles, and it would be a good match. Gaara vs Misumi would be a joke. Lee vs Tenten would be an interesting bout since Lee was all about close-range taijutsu while Tenten favored long-range attacks. Sasuke had little interest in the match between Shikamaru and Kankuro. One favored clan jutsu that Sasuke couldn't copy, and the other was a puppeteer, a shinobi art that Sasuke had no interest in. As the genin below them filed out, Kakashi looked at his team. This marks the end of the preliminary matches. How do you think you stack up compared to these? Naruto answered, I don't have enough information to be sure, but I would be confident against most of them. Tenten is great, but my futon, Repusho, Wind Release, Gale Palm, has 360 degrees of protections. Shikamaru doesn't have any area jutsu that I'm aware of, so my clones would defeat him. I didn't see Kankuro or Lee, so I can't say one way or the other. Misumi didn't show much, but based on look of fear when he found out he would be facing Gaara, I think his skills aren't as developed as they could be. Tommorow would be fun to fight against as another wind user, but with my larger chakra reserves my jutsu would eventually win out. Neji and Gaara are the only ones that would really worry me. Kakashi found the analysis reasonable. And you, Sasuke? Sasuke decided to be honest. I believe I'd be able to defeat all of them. I am least confident about Gaara. His Sanjutsu is powerful, but he could be hiding other abilities, if so that makes him very dangerous. I know you've told me Lee could be a handful since he's been using weights longer, but with only taijutsu to rely on I'm not that concerned. Neji might be a good opponent, but as Naruto pointed out earlier he toyed with his opponent, which means he'll probably make stupid mistakes. Tommorow is a strong kunoichi, however fire beats wind. Shikamaru's shadow jutsu relays on trickery. It doesn't move at my speed. With my Sharingan I'll be able to see it coming regardless of what else is going on. Kakashi agreed with Sasuke's tactical reasoning even if he was a shred too confident about seeing through all of Inooro's tricks. Sakura? Sakura bit her lip and then said, I don't know how well they defend against genjutsu, so it's hard to say. If I hit any of them with the genjutsu and it sticks I'll win. That means Neji would be the worst opponent for me to face. Kakashi didn't press Sakura for a more firm answer, but asked her, and how would you face Neji? Sakura thought about it for a few moments and then responded, I'd keep my distance, forcing him to chase me around the arena. At a time where my next move would be obvious to keep my distance, I'd switch it up and rush him and try to time a point-blank Kaiten, Gokaku no Jutsu, fire release, great fireball technique, directly at him. Their sensei gave them an eye smile. Good tactical analysis everyone, let's head back to the training fields and work on improving jutsu speed. The melding of chakra through hand seals required intense focus not only on the hand seals themselves but on the internal process of transmuting the chakra into the required element and shape. Doing it at normal speed typically provided the most power, rushing a jutsu without properly forming the chakra weakened it or made it fail altogether. It was also an excellent way to further refine chakra control, which would make chakra use more efficient when forming jutsus. Naruto wanted to check on Choji, but saw that if he arrived right now people would wonder how he had already heard about his injuries. After training he would head the hospital and check on him. A part of Naruto wanted to track down Gaara and get payback for Choji, but he knew there would be consequences if he did that. The prognosis for Choji was not good. His leg was amputated at the knee, spelling a probable end to his shinobi career. Choji was determined to continue being a shinobi, but the leg would cause problems. He could obtain a prosthetic, but he could not channel chakra through it, and this would slow him down if he had to travel. In addition, his clan's signature jutsu would not function properly with a limb that couldn't expand. The Sandaime allowed Choji to stay on the shinobi roster for now, but he would not be allowed to attend any missions beyond D ranks. Naruto had seen him the night of the preliminaries, and they had talked briefly. Choji's injury was a hard blow to Naruto. Up until now there had been no serious casualties in his shinobi career. None of his fellow classmates had lost their life or limb, and staring at Choji's missing leg hit home many of the lessons his sensei had taught. Being a shinobi wasn't a game, it was life and death. After the practice on using jutsu rapidly, Kakashi had announced there would be no training or missions the next day. Instead, it would be a free day, to relax a little. Kakashi had told them that they were going to be given some more specific training tailored to each of them. He had kept mum about the specifics, so Naruto couldn't help but wonder. The highlight of the day was that his chakra kunais had come in. He had excitedly tried to channel chakra into them and they had hummed with blue energy. A simple toss at a target saw the target smashed through and the chakra blade flying another 40 feet before burying itself 3 feet into the ground. He would have to be careful with them. Naruto experimented with his clones. Unfortunately, unlike regular kunai and equipment, the chakra kunai would not be replicated when he made a shadow clone. While they looked like his custom-made kunais, it was impossible to channel chakra like the chakra blades. Still worth every penny, I bet that bastard Gaara-san wouldn't stop a throw from one of these. Naruto spent his day off working with his new chakra blades. He didn't know how intense the new training would be, and he wanted to become proficient in what they could and couldn't do. Naruto discovered that the wind chakra did not actually make the blades go faster, it simply increased their piercing power dramatically. The blades pierced rock, ground, trees, and even metal. He would need to test it against some defensive jutsu to see how deadly it was. One test Naruto did was to throw it at his clone, who then used Futon, Repusho, Wind Release, Gale Palm. The results were surprising. At normal power the jutsu cancelled out the piercing aspects of the kunai, but still struck with force to kill. However, if he had the clone overpower the jutsu, it would throw the kunai off course. Good to know if I ever face someone with the wind element using thrown projectiles. Naruto also tested the effects of throwing regular kunai and the chakra kunai past his clones, who then used the Repusho to push the kunai even faster. It was tricky to get the timing right at first, but once he had it he was able to do it consistently. Pleased with the results, he finished out his conditioning for the day and went to Ramen Ichiraku for some dinner. Kakashi met with the team the next morning. All three were eager to learn about the new training he had planned for them. You've seen the Chunin exams and know the abilities of the genin in the competition. There is a lot left to teach you. However, with all that has been going on, there is a rare opportunity for you to learn from a different sensei for a short period of time. Naruto asked, "A different sensei? Why?" Sasuke narrowed his eyes. He didn't want to learn from someone else, he wanted to learn from the best. Unless he was apprenticing under the Sandaime, he didn't like this. Sakura remained silent, but she also wondered what was going on. Kakashi sighed. "I appreciate your loyalty, but the Hokage has given me a mission. I can't provide the details. That being said, I think you'll be pleased with my plans for your training while I am gone." Kakashi looked at his genin and said, "For one thing, you'll still meet as a team on a daily basis to work on teamwork. Incorporate the new skills that you learn and see how they synergize with the rest of the team. That will take place in the afternoons. In the morning you will be assigned to a new instructor." The team nodded. Kakashi's tone brooked no dissent. While they weren't happy, they understood. Kakashi had been given a mission straight from the Hokage. Since they couldn't go on it, it was probably an A-ranked mission if not an S-class. Sasuke will be training with Rock Lee. Lee is preparing for the Chunin exams and could use a sparring partner that can keep up with his taijutsu abilities. Since all three of Gare's students are in the Chunin exams, he had decided to spend an equal amount of time with each of them. Learn from Gare. His taijutsu skills are second only to me. While I will not give away his secrets, he does have a technique that would defeat even me. His genin looked at him with wide eyes. Defeat Kakashi-sensei? Guy was a well-known shinobi and listed as an A to S rank in other villages' bingo books. But Kakashi was listed as an S-ranked shinobi everywhere. What kind of technique was that? Sasuke looked hungry and Kakashi shook his head. He won't show you that technique because it is a forbidden jutsu. The point is to learn from his taijutsu style and train hard with Lee. Neither of them will say a word about your abilities or your sharing an. Hi Kakashi-sensei. Kakashi turned to Sakura. I know you've been getting lessons where you can, and it has been spotty to try to find a Jonin-level shinobi not on a mission. I've spoken with Kurinai and she had agreed to train you in genjutsu. In exchange I'll be providing supplemental training when I return to her genin in ninjutsu and taijutsu. Sakura was happy. Kurinai was famous for being the best genjutsu user in Konoha. Naruto asked, what changed? I thought Jonin typically only taught their own team? Kakashi beamed at his pupil. That was a question he would not even have thought to ask when he had just graduated from the academy. A good question, Naruto. What changed was that I'm not here to personally oversee the training of my genin team. While the Hokage has the final say, I did barter a bit with him. In return for him sending me on the mission, he spoke with the Jonin that I wanted to help train you and asked them to be receptive of the idea. To be honest, this type of cross-training has fantastic potential benefits. It's really only tradition that stopped us before. That makes sense, Kakashi-sensei. So who am I training with? Is it Asuma? I know he has the same elemental affinity as I do. I bet he could teach me a lot of jutsu. Kakashi gave his pupil an eye smile. It was a good guess. No, Naruto, you get to be trained by one of Konoha's very own legends. Naruto was positively drooling while he wondered who it could be. Jiraiya of the Sannin. Naruto's eyes grew big. He's the one who taught the fourth Hokage, and the fourth Hokage taught you. Kakashi nodded, pleased to see his student had continued his reading. Sasuke was jealous of Naruto's opportunity, however, two things stopped him from speaking up. First and foremost, he knew it would just cause him problems with Kakashi. It would be stupid to irritate the man. Secondly, he was actually looking forward to working with Lee. This would be a real chance to test how strong he was against a competent genin. It would be a good measuring stick to see at what level his skills were. All right, Team 7, make me proud while I'm gone. I should return prior to the Chunin exams. After the exams I'll look for a nice B mission we can go on. The genin smiled confidently. Most genin could not go on B-ranked missions, but most genin didn't have Kakashi Hatake as their sensei. Sakura reported to her first lesson with Kurenai. Kurenai was curious about the pink-haired genin. She had heard the rumors that Team 7 was dysfunctional and that the girl was the worst type of fangirl. Before Kakashi had left, he had taken Kurenai aside and stated he had downplayed his team a bit and that Sakura had put her fangirl ways behind her. It was a good thing to, otherwise Kurenai would have put the poor girl through the ringer. Even so, Kurenai wanted to test the girl. Kakashi was unreadable behind his mask and one never could be certain of the angle he was working. His team wasn't selected for the Chunin exams. That meant something, and she hoped it didn't mean she would have to waste her time with a talentless slacker mooning over a boy who wouldn't return her affections. Sakura arrived 10 minutes early. 1 point in her favor, the red-eyed Jonin thought. Sakura presented herself properly and inclined her head. Thank you for agreeing to teach me, Kurenai-sensei. Respectful too, but let's see how strong of a shinobi she is. Kurenai silently and subtly placed a genjutsu on her charge. She was shocked when within a second Sakura clapped her hands together, Kai. The genjutsu had not been a powerful one, so it was disrupted by Sakura's chakra release. Kurenai was impressed. Being able to detect a genjutsu like that was impressive. She knew some Chunin who weren't as adept as this girl was. Very good, Sakura. I see Kakashi had provided some training on detecting genjutsu. Sakura responded, Hi Kurenai-sensei. It spoke highly of Kakashi's teaching abilities that he had taught them how to detect genjutsu. She had secretly expected Kakashi to focus on the flashier aspects of the shinobi arts. She had often thought with a 1000 jutsus Kakashi's only response to a problem would be to throw a ninjutsu at it. While Kurenai was primarily there to learn genjutsu, she wanted to test her other abilities. Sakura, we are going to spar, keep it to taijutsu. Sakura immediately raised her hands into an academy fighting stance. The Jonin rushed forward, not at full speed but fast enough to cause most genin problems. Sakura dodged the blow and slid around her opponent. Kurenai followed up her initial rush with a rapid-fire kick that Sakura ducked. Kurenai let her foot land and then pumped chakra into her feet, speeding her forward in a rush. Sakura rolled to the side, reacting instantly to the attack. Kurenai was again surprised. So far Sakura had avoided all of her attacks by a fair margin. Kurenai upped her speed a bit and pressed forward with a rapid-fire combination of punches and kicks. Sakura twisted to the side of the kicks and pushed the punches away with an open palm. Sakura was purely defensive in her motion, but that defense was amazing. Kurenai again upped her speed. Sakura continued avoiding every blow she could and deflected attacks that couldn't be completely avoided. The pink-haired teenager even lashed out with a low stomp aimed at the genjutsu mistress's ankle. Kurenai avoided the blow and responded by coming in fast with a palm strike. In a move that seemed to defy gravity, her opponent bent backwards avoiding the blow. Kurenai stiffed her fingers with the hand that missed the blow and drove them straight down at the genin's exposed torso, only for Sakura's arm to deflect the attack, flip her lower body over completely and kick out with both legs. Kurenai blocked the blow with her forearm, but the momentum drove her back a step. Sakura pushed off with her legs and created separation between the two. Kurenai stared at Sakura. Kami, that girl is good. What is Kakashi thinking specializing her in taijutsu like this? While impressive, the academy reports show her to have exceptional chakra control. Medical jutsu or genjutsu should be her primary focus. Kurenai did not realize that Sakura was not taijutsu focused. She did not realize that Sakura had already a base working knowledge of medical procedures, if not the medical jutsus themselves. She did not realize Sakura already had mastered 2 separate genjutsu and an offensive elemental ninjutsu. At that moment Kurenai was frustrated that a potential genjutsu expert in the making had been neglected because of who her sensei was. If Kakashi hadn't gone on that mission, would that arrogant fool have never let this girl shine in genjutsu? Kurenai angrily thought. Kurenai brought her speed up to that of a Chunin level shinobi. She lashed out partially in anger with a devastating series of blows, allowing some of her true power to bleed into them. It was with growing astonishment that Sakura continued to evade the blows. Now the blows were missing by a hair's breadth, but they were missed. Sakura twisted and elongated her body like an escape artist. She rarely needed to block, but when she did it was placed perfectly. Kurenai was not a taijutsu expert. In a pure taijutsu conflict, there wasn't a jonin in the leaf that wasn't her superior. That being said, she was still up a Chunin level in her taijutsu abilities. Sakura was making a mockery of that fact, however. Granted, Sakura had been focused almost purely on defense, less than a handful of offensive strikes were shown. But when it came to pure dodging ability, the girl was massively ahead of Kurenai's own team. Kurenai finally had enough and moved to her maximum level of speed. Sakura managed to continue dodging for another 30 seconds before the jonin managed to get in a good palm strike to the chest, knocking her down. Kurenai had broken a sweat and was actually breathing a bit heavily. In a moment of shock, Kurenai realized that Sakura wasn't any more winded than she was. I'm still angry at Kakashi for not focusing the girl on an appropriate shinobi path that could use her excellent level of chakra control, but this is ridiculous. The girl went from being near last in taijutsu combat to being at least Chunin level at avoidance and evasion in less than 6 months. That was well done, Sakura. No one on my team could have lasted that long. I see Kakashi has trained you in taijutsu quite well. Sakura rubbed her chest for a moment and responded, "Thank you very much, Kurenai-sensei." Kurenai smiled at the girl. She reminded her a bit of Shino. Shino was very reserved and didn't talk much unless asked to. The girl wasn't shy, just reserved. Was she really a fangirl in the academy? She acts nothing like it. Now that you've seen what can happen when you come across someone stronger than you in taijutsu fight, how would learning genjutsu help you? Sakura considered her answer and responded, in a variety of ways. Against you it would have been ineffective because of your genjutsu mastery, however most shinobi don't have your skills. First, being able to place a genjutsu before the fight even begins could allow me to win the fight. Second, during the fight I could have used a genjutsu to distract you. If I could do so even momentarily, I could have pulled a kunai and gone in for the kill. Kurenai laughed softly. I agree with your first answer, but the second answer is far more difficult than you realize. In the middle of a taijutsu spar it can extremely difficult to focus your genjutsu while avoiding blows. Sakura frowned thoughtfully. It was difficult, but her instructor made it sound nearly impossible. Kurenai was adept at reading body language and said, I see you are doubting my words. You'll see what I mean after I teach you your first genjutsu. Sakura realized that Kurenai had not been fully briefed by Kakashi-sensei. She spoke up, Pardon Kurenai-sensei, but I already know a few. Kurenai looked slightly disturbed by the announcement. Kakashi did teach his student genjutsu? And taught her this level of taijutsu? Kurenai shook her head. I assume you know Magen, Narakumi no Jutsu. Demonic illusion, hell viewing technique. Hi. What else? I know Magen, Kokoni Arazu no Jutsu, demonic illusion, false surroundings technique, and one other tailor-made jutsu. Kurenai forced her features to impassiveness, but on the inside she was dumbfounded. The girl knew 3 genjutsus and one of them custom-made. Use the last one on me, Sakura. Sakura nodded and gathered chakra around her. Not good, most shinobi could sense that. I guess Kakashi can't teach everything perfectly. Right-un, Mahi, lighting release, paralysis, Sakura shouted as her hands blurred through hand seals. Kurenai sensed the genjutsu immediately and dispelled it, however she was quite speechless as she thought through what she had just been hit with. The drawing of chakra was not a downside of this genjutsu. The entire point was misdirection. The opponent would think that a ninjutsu was being used on them, never suspecting that it was actually a genjutsu. What's more is that the girl had created the genjutsu flawlessly. If Kurenai had not been expecting a genjutsu, even she may not have realized right away that it was a genjutsu. The attack was genius and the girl had mastered it. Mastered it, not just functionally used it, but actually mastered it. Kurenai took a deep breath and tried to calm down. All right, I'm new to being a Jonin instructor. It's obvious that Kakashi is better at this than me. One day I can be there too. But for the life of me, I don't understand why Team 7 wasn't placed in the Chunin exams. It's possible that the team just has internal conflict or that Naruto is completely dead weight, but I can't imagine Kakashi couldn't improve even the dead last in the academy given the rapid and amazing growth of this girl. Inner Sakura felt a bit smug. It was clear that Kurenai had not expected her to be this far advanced. Take that! No one should doubt Team 7. Outwardly Sakura remained calm and ready for her instruction to begin. Kurenai quieted her thoughts and pushed them aside. All right Sakura, you have surprised me. When I saw your taijutsu skills, I had expected little to no effort made on learning genjutsu. I was wrong. Have you practiced genjutsu during sparring? Can you use it in the middle of a fight? Hi Kurenai-sensei. Kakashi-sensei has had me spar with Sasuke and Naruto while using genjutsu. Kakashi-sensei says that I won't always have the luxury of getting the drop on an opponent and that I should always be aware of my surroundings while using any jutsu, genjutsu or otherwise. It was sound advice, but typically that was beyond the skills of a mere genin. All right Sakura, I have less than a month to enhance your skills. Initially, I had expected to simply give you a foundation in genjutsu for you to grow on, but with your ability, frankly Sakura, I plan on teaching you some very potent genjutsu. If you aren't able to learn them right away, please do not think less of yourself. Sakura cracked a smile. Kurenai-sensei, I will do my best. It is an honor to be your student. Kurenai could detect no falsehood or fake flattery. Kurenai had someone on her hands that every teacher and sensei dreamed of. A willing, ready, talented, and eager student who wanted to learn their specialty. Kurenai smiled and began teaching Sakura on how to become the next genjutsu mistress of Konoha. Sasuke had been told to arrive at 5 a.m. to meet Gari and Lee. Waking up early wasn't a huge deal, but the sun hadn't even risen yet. Sasuke wasn't going to complain, however, and arrived promptly. Gari and Lee were already doing push-ups. As Sasuke arrived, Gari continued his workout as he shouted, "Sasuke! You are early, how youthful of you!" Sasuke stared at the green-clad Jonin. The man was so loud. He bet Naruto would have fit in much better with Gari than he was going to. Sasuke responded, "I am here to train with you, Gari-sensei. What should I do first?" Gari smiled widely, making his teeth gleam. "We have 1 hour left in our morning workout, just copy us and then you and Likuan will spar." Sasuke complied and began doing a truly obnoxious amount of push-ups, squats and lunges. Sasuke thanked Kakashi for his conditioning, otherwise he would never have been able to keep up. After the hour of hell was done, Gari wanted Lee and Sasuke to spar. "Both of you remove your weights." Lee was surprised by the command but obeyed. They dropped, raising quite a din. "Those weights are heavier than mine. Good thing I have my Sharingan." Sasuke activated the seal that reduced the weight to nothing. He stretched a bit, moving around, getting used to his speed without the weights. Gari shouted, "Begin!" Sasuke activated his Sharingan and saw Lee blur toward him. With the Sharingan he easily followed Lee's movements. He saw the telegraphed flying side kick with ease. He lifted his arm to block and took the blow. That was a mistake. Lee struck with tremendous force, causing Sasuke to skid across the ground, barely retaining his feet. He could feel a bruise already starting to form on his arm. Gari had not said it was only a taijutsu duel, so he pulled out a brace of kunai and threw them at the charging Lee. Lee deflected all of the blades with ease, but they slowed him down by a fraction of a second. Enough time for Sasuke to complete the Kawarimi and substitute himself with his pack he had set down earlier. Lee smashed into the pack with another bone-crunching kick. Sasuke took the moment of reprieve to drop a smoke bomb down and create a shadow clone. Lee charged into the smoke and kicked out at the clone as the real Sasuke hid behind a tree with every ounce of his stealth. Lee lashed out with a taijutsu combo of kicks and punches that the clone dodged away from. The clone couldn't afford to block a single blow, as that would make it dissipate even if the block was perfect. Sasuke analyzed the fight looking for a weakness. In terms of taijutsu, Lee appeared to have none. However, he did seem to attack with abandon. There was no thought about possibly stumbling into a trap. Sasuke wrapped an explosive seal around a kunai and then charged forward. Lee was caught off guard for a moment, but quickly kicked out at the clone, driving it back, and then turned on the real Sasuke. Sasuke tossed the kunai up in the area, leapt up and preformed the kawarimi again, this time with his clone. His clone grasped the explosively wrapped kunai and saw Lee jump up to kick him hard. The clone let the kunai explode in his hand just as Lee struck. Sasuke timed the move to avoid causing Lee serious damage, but the explosion blasted Lee down. His guard was down and the real Sasuke sped forward and tapped the falling Lee on the neck with his kunai, simulating the kill if it was a real fight. Lee sprang back up ready to continue, but Guy halted the fight. "Sasuke! My rival has taught you very well. You saw that my Lee-kun was stronger than you, so you used your ninjutsu techniques to defeat him." Lee looked crestfallen. "Cheer up, Lee. This was just the first spar. Your youth was too eager against such a tricky opponent. Not all shinobi fight head-on. You must be able to avoid falling for their tricks. Sasuke will be a great sparring partner for you to train with." "Hi, Gari-sensei. Next time I will beat him. And if I cannot beat him, I will do 500 one-handed push-ups. And if I cannot do 500 one-handed push-ups, I will run around the village on my hands." Sasuke felt a Kakashi eye twitch flickering on the left side of his face. "This month is going to kill me," Sasuke grimly thought to himself. The next fight involved a pure taijutsu spar with Sasuke versus Lee. Sasuke knew he was going to be hard-pressed without ninjutsu to back up his fight. He didn't complain about it being unfair though. This was an opportunity to push himself against a specialist. Lee came in with another blistering fast and powerful kick. Sasuke ducked underneath the attack and lashed out with his own combination of strikes. Lee was faster and blocked each attack and pushed forward again. Sasuke could block attacks at an angle but could never take a straight hit without becoming bruised. Sasuke was pushed to his limit in the spar. His eyes allowed him to see each attack coming, but the speed in which he had to defend and strike back at limited his possible moves. Sasuke was in excellent physical condition, but this spar was testing that. After all, he had worked himself ragged with the Green Duo's insane or warm-up. Sasuke was slowing slightly and the avoided attacks were being missed by thinner and thinner margins. The desire to win and prove himself pushed him to try something different. Lee sent a haymaker to his right and he stepped back just barely enough to avoid, then he shoved chakra into his feet and launched what amounted to a flying tackle at Lee. Sasuke's momentum was fast and even with Lee's speed he couldn't quite kick out in time. Sasuke slammed into Lee's torso and they hit the ground. The wind was knocked out of Lee as he gasped for breath. Sasuke attempted to capitalize it by lifting up and striking downward with a palm strike to the face. Even out of breath, Lee was faster and caught Sasuke's hand as it descended. Sasuke was then thrown up and away from Lee. Lee jumped to his feet at the ready and rushed forward. The last uchiha was frustrated. His Naruto-like surprise move hadn't worked. The bout continued with Sasuke getting more and more worn down. Finally it happened. Lee's punch was blocked a fraction of a second too slow and clipped Sasuke's temple and he hit the ground seeing stars. Gari called a halt to the match. "Stop, it is over. You showcased your youthful spirits. I am very proud." Sasuke groaned as he got up. He needed to get faster and stronger too. If it wasn't for his Sharingan, Lee could pick him apart with ease. Sasuke really wanted to rest for a few moments, but Gari had them put on their weight load again and now it was time to sprint around the village. Sasuke felt his body quiver. Insane, these two are insane. Sasuke plowed on trying to keep up with two green monsters. Naruto had been instructed to meet Jiraiya by the hot springs. He wondered how much he had read about the great toad sage was actually true. Could he really summon a toad that could crush the Hokage Tower? Books he learned were marvelous information sources, however they were not always factual. Stories tended to get embellished, and sometimes the authors were biased or were not the primary source of information. Whatever the truth was, he was ready for it. Or so he thought. Naruto waited for the sage to make himself known when he saw a man peeking into the girl's bathhouse. Naruto did a double take. The man was breaking 3 separated laws by what he was doing. Horror slowly dawned on him as he started to stare at the man. It couldn't be. This was the legendary Toad Sage? This was the last loyal Sannin? Naruto couldn't help himself. No way. Jiraiya the legendary Toad Sage is a pervert? Jiraiya had known of the boy's presence and had let him see what he was doing. He had not expected to have him announce him like this. The brat's volume alerted the girls that someone was peeking. You brat, what do you think you are doing? Naruto was fuming. This was like learning your hero hated ramen. Jiraiya sped away as the angry women gave chase. Naruto sighed and took to the rooftops to follow the perverted old man. Eventually, the girls lost track of him and Naruto confronted the tall legend again. You're supposed to train me, not peek on girls, you pervy sage. Jiraiya laughed, and just why should I train you? Naruto glared at him, because Kakashi-sensei arranged it. Don't play dumb with me. Stop wasting time and get on with the training. I have to meet my team in a few hours. Jiraiya rubbed his chin. Whom you want me? Jiraiya to train you? On your schedule? You must think highly of yourself, kid. Naruto poked his thumb into his own chest and said, highly of myself? I'm going to be the next Hokage, so damn right. Now what are you going to train me in first? Jiraiya scoffed, kid, and it is an if I train you it is going to be on my schedule. You can play with your little friends later. Naruto shook his head. My sensei gave us instructions, and those aren't changing regardless of what you say. Jiraiya turned around. By then. Naruto shrugged. He wasn't changing his mind. He suspected he was being tested, but if he wasn't it didn't matter. His team was more important than training with the old pervert. To Jiraiya's shock, Naruto kept walking. Kakashi, that's pretty impressive loyalty you've got in that kid. Either that or he's a complete idiot not realizing what he is missing. The white-haired spy master decided to follow the boy discreetly. The blonde went to a training ground and summoned 24 clones. The clones spread out and worked on a number of things. Some walked up trees, others balanced dozens of leaves on various parts of their body, rotating them in different directions. Still others helped the main Naruto with his workout. They tossed kunai at varying speeds at the original, who deflected them all. Jiraiya was impressed with the kid. His control was quite good, and he knew that with the fox's chakra must have meant absolutely abysmal initial chakra control. The kid was also fast and worked on his conditioning while improving his combat abilities. Jiraiya made himself known and instantly Naruto was on guard, as were the rest of his clones. Again Jiraiya was impressed, as Naruto had preformed an almost undetectable kawarimi with one of his clones. If he had been assassin or opponent he would have targeted what he thought was the original. Kakashi, your paranoia passes on to another generation. Naruto looked at the sage and said, I thought you weren't going to train me. I like your spunk, brat, but don't get carried away. If I am to train you I expect appropriate respect. Training that had been ingrained in him leapt to the fore. Hi Jiraiya-sensei. Jiraiya blinked. Shaking himself he said, all right, I'm going to teach you an ace jutsu. Jiraiya told Naruto he was going to teach him to summon toads. He was surprised when Naruto knew instantly what he was talking about. I thought he was supposed to barely be able to read, but he knows all about the various summons of the world? Jiraiya wondered if Kakashi had gotten his mitts on the boy while he was in the academy. It would explain his knowledge base and skill level. Jiraiya went through the summoning and summoned a toad and presented the contract to Naruto. Naruto was all smiles and gratefully signed his name in blood on the contract. All right, kid, before you summon anything I want to talk to you about your chakra. Jiraiya asked if he ever felt another chakra source available to him during certain times. No, but I've avoided trying to tap into the nine-tailed fox's chakra. What? How? Did Kakashi tell you about this? Naruto shook his head. No, Jiraiya-sensei, I read that a Jinchuuriki can tap into the power of the demon they have sealed inside of themselves. However, not being a seal master and knowing the Nine-Tails' fearsome reputation, I thought it best not to even try. Jiraiya was a bit put out at not being able to explain anything to his godson. Well, I am seal master, so go ahead and give it a try. Naruto assumed a meditative pose and turned his sight inward. His chakra surrounded his body and he tried to feel it, looking for any sign of chakra that was different. After several minutes, he opened his eyes. I'm not sure how. All of my chakra feels the same. Jiraiya gave a theatrical sigh. Exhaust yourself of chakra almost to the point of chakra exhaustion and then try the summoning jutsu. Naruto responded with a hi Jiraiya-sensei and sprang into action. He created 50 clones and had them all fire a futon, Daitopper, wind release, great breakthrough, into the sky. Jiraiya was impressed by the kid's chakra reserves. They surpassed even his estimation. The kid's not bad with control, but the way he is using that jutsu is very ineffective. Jiraiya had not yet realized that Naruto was deliberately overpowering the jutsu in a wasteful manner to better exhaust his reserves. Finally Naruto stopped and panted, my chakra reserves are really low, can I try the summoning jutsu now? The Toad Sage nodded, go ahead, and if you feel another chakra source, latch onto it and use it. Naruto took a deep breath, bit his thumb and went through the hand seals. Kuchios no Jutsu. Summoning technique. Naruto slammed his hand onto the ground and a puff of smoke obscured view for a few moments. As the smoke cleared, Naruto saw that he had successfully summoned a toad, however the size of the creature was a bit sad. The small orange toad waved and said, yo. Naruto looked at the creature flatly. Jiraiya laughed, ha ha kid, you have got to be kidding me. Is that the best you can do? Naruto glared at his temporary sensei and said, if I hadn't had all my chakra drained I would have done much better. Jiraiya snorted, if you had harnessed the Kyuubi chakra like I told you to it wouldn't be an issue. Gamakichi looked at the two shinobi and interrupted, hey, why did you summon me? And do you have any snacks? Naruto took a deep breath trying to suppress his frustration. He inclined his head to the summoned toad. Hello Gamakichi-san, I was attempting to try the Kuchios no Jutsu, summoning technique, for the first time and you arrived. Gamakichi looked at the boy and did a shrug, or at least the miniature toad equivalent of one. So, snacks? Naruto shook his head in apology. I am sorry Gamakichi-san, next time I summon you I will have snacks. Gamakichi sighed, be seeing you then, and with that he returned to the land of toads. The legendary Sannin shook his head, you're still using your own chakra. You need to use the other chakra you have inside of you. Naruto shouted, how? Give me an exercise or training or something, don't just tell me to do something and not show me how to do it. Jiraiya was amused at the boy's tantrum, apparently Kakashi hadn't turned him into the perfect disciplined shinobi yet. Look brat, I'm the one training you. Try meditating again. Naruto grumbled to himself and meditated. After about 30 minutes Jiraiya asked, anything? Naruto opened one eye, if I felt anything different I would have told you. Jiraiya flicked Naruto's forehead sending him backwards. Naruto tumbled back up to his feet. I have to get going Jiraiya-sensei, my team is meeting soon. The Sannin nodded, all right kid, go train with your friends, we'll try again tomorrow. The three genin of Team 7 met and went over what they were learning. Sasuke and Naruto were on the ragged edge due to near chakra exhaustion for Naruto and complete and utter physical exhaustion with Sasuke. Sakura was in the best shape. They took it easy and did some simple exercises that Kakashi had left them to build on teamwork. Combination attacks, clone tactics and team signal memorization. As a team they talked about what they were learning. Sasuke talked about the insane green duo. While he wasn't learning a flashy jutsu, he was confident in being able to improve his taijutsu. If he could move at the speed and strength of Lee and use his Sharingan, he felt his hand-to-hand skills would match up fairly well with a Jonin. The others didn't disagree. Sakura laughed and talked about how her sensei was flabbergasted at the skills she possessed. She also talked about the A-rank jutsu that Kurenai was going to be teaching her. Genjutsu was something that the three thought would be very valuable. Being able to pin an opponent in place while the kill strike was delivered would make taking out threats easy and nearly risk-free. Naruto was at a crossroads. He didn't want to lie to his team, but he also was worried about revealing his secret. Would Sakura and Sasuke look at him differently? Would they call him a demon and a monster? Naruto wanted to give them more credit than that, but he was scared. He finally belonged to something. Sure, he had a competitive rivalry with Sasuke, but they worked together in almost perfect harmony. And even though Sakura-chan hadn't agreed to go on a date, she had stopped hitting him and actually seemed to enjoy his company. Could he risk all of that by telling them about the damn demon in his belly? Sakura looked at Naruto, who was strangely silent and contemplative. Naruto, what's on your mind? Aren't you going to tell us about your training? Naruto trembled and remained silent. Sakura looked on worriedly. Naruto? Naruto! What is the matter with you? Sasuke activated his Sharingan to double-check that Naruto was Naruto. Seeing that he was in fact Naruto, he remained silent. Guys? I'm really glad to be on your team. Sasuke quirked an eyebrow. Where was Naruto going with this? Naruto took a deep breath. I have something to tell you, a secret that only the adults of the village know. Sakura could see her teammate was struggling, and what was he to her? A friend? Yes, her friend. Her friend was terrified. Naruto, whatever it is, just tell us. Naruto smiled at his pink-haired teammate and said, the nine-tailed fox wasn't killed. It was sealed inside a baby. I was that baby. I'm a Jinchu Uriki. A weight seemed to lift off of Naruto for a moment. He had said it. Whatever happened from here on wasn't up to him anymore. Sakura widened her eyes in shock. The Kyuubi wasn't dead? That monster was inside of Naruto? Sasuke barely had any outward reaction. Instead, he said, what are you worried about? No one with an ounce of sense could think you were the nine-tailed fox. It's the most powerful of all the Biju, a monster that destroyed entire divisions of shinobi. Sasuke paused, and you're a dobi, little different, isn't it? Naruto gaped at Sasuke. Then he laughed. Tears welled in Naruto's eyes. Sasuke didn't care if he was a demon container. He looked at Sakura, who smiled at their antics. Naruto, you're our teammate. If you were evil, do you think the Hokage would let you become a shinobi? Naruto rubbed his eyes. I guess I've been worried about nothing then. His two teammates nodded. After a moment, Sasuke said, you still haven't told us what you're learning to do. Naruto rubbed the back of his head and said, well, that's what brought this on. Pervy Sage is trying to teach me how to tap into Kyuubi chakra. Sakura did 2 double takes. Jiraiya wanted Naruto to use the Nine Tails chakra. The second double take was in regards to what Naruto called the legendary Sannin. Pervy Sage? Show respect, Naruto Baka. Naruto laughed, but he is a pervy sage. He was peeking on women when I first met him. Sakura rolled her eyes. Naruto, you go from sharing a deep dark secret to making bad jokes. You're lucky Kakashi-sensei isn't here. Naruto scowled at the pink-haired girl and muttered under his breath. The three started working on some of their combination attacks. Naruto's chakra reserves were low, but he had enough to fire a few jutsus. He showed them his chakra blades, and Sakura refined her genjutsu on clones that Naruto and Sasuke then dispatched with jutsu combination attacks. Naruto was happy. Completely exhausted but happy. His teammates hadn't changed at all after learning his secret. They treated him the same. I was worried for nothing, I'm glad I told them. Naruto collapsed into bed, even his massive reserves were spent. Tomorrow morning he was going to work with the pervy sage again. Naruto hoped they would work on something different. He had been getting along just fine without tapping into the damn fox. Why was it so important? Naruto's thoughts were cut off by the immediate arrival of sleep. The next few days were filled with frustration for Naruto. he would exhaust himself depleting chakra only to try to summoning and bringing in nothing larger than Uzumaki. Uzumaki didn't mind because Naruto had done as promised and brought snacks, but for Naruto it was aggravating. It reminded him of when he was in the academy and couldn't get anything right. Naruto was beginning to suspect Jiraiya had no idea how to get him to draw upon the fox's chakra. Which would make sense, it wasn't like he had trained a Jinchuriki before. One morning he decided to do things differently. The Toad Sage had instructed him to exhaust his chakra again. Naruto smirked and said, all right, let me try pushing my chakra into one big move, maybe that will be faster. Jiraiya suspiciously eyed the boy but nodded. Naruto turned around, flashed through the hand seals and shouted, Kuchios no Jutsu, summoning technique. This time Naruto was not exhausted. This time he was pushing his refined chakra as strongly as he could into the summon. He envisioned a massive toad, one that would make Uzumaki look like the runt. The Sanin's eyes widened as a massive cloud of smoke erupted and he felt a familiar chakra presence. Naruto suddenly found himself up in the air on the back of a giant toad. Yatta! Naruto looked down on what he was standing on. The toad was massive and magenta-colored. Unlike Uzumaki, he wore clothing. The black kimono partially concealed the mesh armor he wore underneath. In his hands he had a Susumata, and across his back was a shield that looked almost like a plate. The young Jinchuriki was ecstatic about the size of the summon. The large toad rumbled underneath him, Jiraiya, did you summon me? Jiraiya shook his head, no Gameken-san, that was my apprentice on your head who summoned you. The massive toad responded with another deep rumble, I did not see him, how clumsy of me. You must be Naruto. Naruto laughed again, no big deal, it's great to meet you Gameken-san. The toad nodded his head slowly, likewise Naruto-san. Why did you summon me? Naruto explained that he wanted to try summoning larger toads than just Uzumaki and that if he tired it when he was well rested and had full access to his chakra he thought he could do it. Jiraiya interjected, Naruto. The purpose was to use the Kyuubi chakra, not bother important toads. You shouldn't call a battle toad unless it is truly needed. Gameken rumbled, I'm not that important. Jiraiya smacked his face with his palm, he would have liked it if his trusted battle ally had backed him up. Naruto huffed, what is your problem, pervy sage? Just because I didn't use Kyuubi chakra doesn't mean his isn't an incredibly powerful ability. You taught me something that will let me take out Jonin-level threats. Stop calling me that. One day you'll need to tap into that chakra, and you'll need to control it. The Yondaime designed that seal so that you could use that Kyuubi chakra. You insult his legacy by not using that power. Naruto sobered a bit. While still very happy with the result of his jutsu, he didn't want to denigrate the legacy of the greatest shinobi Konoha has ever produced. It did make him think, why had the Yondaime had designed the seal that way? Well, sorry about that Gameken-san. I'll only summon you if I really need to next time. Gameken nodded solemnly and then dissipated. Naruto smoothly landed on the ground and faced the taller man. Jiraiya-sensei, what I'm doing currently isn't working. What else can I try? Exhaust your chakra and keep trying, I have an idea we can try tomorrow. Naruto created his shadow clones and began to deplete all of his chakra. Time for extreme measures, kid, Jiraiya thought. Since Naruto had used a large amount of chakra summoning Gameken, it didn't take too long between shadow clones and ninjutsu for his chakra reserves to fall lower. Jiraiya saw that the boy was winded and walked next to the panting Jinchuriki and flicked his forehead protector with a heavy dose of power. Naruto sailed into the nearby chasm. Now you'll have to ask the demon chakra or you'll die. Naruto was enraged. Has he gone senile? Naruto attempted to grasp the edge of the canyon, but the sides were slick with water runoff. Naruto pulled out one of his chakra kunai, wrapped wire around it and hurled it at the side of the canyon. It blasted through rock until the force was spent and lodged in firmly. Naruto grasped the other of the wire around a second kunai that he held onto. His grip was sure and he then swung directly at the wall, no longer falling, only downward. Naruto channeled the tiny amount of chakra he had left into his feet to brace the blow as he slammed into the side of the wall. Jiraiya didn't hear the summoning jutsu. Kami, what have I done? Jiraiya raced to the edge, looking down to see an angry Naruto hanging from ninja wire. Pervy Sage, you barker, you could have killed me. The Sannin shouted back, why didn't you use the summoning jutsu? I don't have enough chakra, I'd only succeed in killing myself and Gamakichi. The Toad Sage shook his head, I've traveled the land, you ungrateful brat. In times of stress and danger, Jinchuuriki naturally draw upon the chakra sealed within them. I know what I'm doing. Now quit playing around and do it. Jiraiya, with far superior chakra control, raced down the side of the canyon and slashed the ninja wire, sending Naruto plummeting once more. Are you bastard pervy sage? Naruto continued falling. His respect for the Sannin was decreasing by each meter her fell. This guy is just guessing. I could really die. With that sudden burst of panic and thought of incoming death, Naruto fell within himself. Looking around, he saw what looked to be a sewer of some kind. This must be within the seal, either that or a genjutsu. Just to be safe, Naruto gathered his chakra. Kai. Still in the same spot, he walked toward the field of the dreadful chakra. Before the massive prison of the Kyuubi, he watched. The fox rushed forward, metaphorically slamming against the bars of the cage. Naruto did not think the fox could hurt him and stared impassively at the monstrous creature. You finally decided to visit, the deep-throated growl emerged the fox's form. Not by choice, demon. Then why are you here, boy? Because some crazy old man wants me to use your chakra, and right now I'm falling down a chasm and am about to die unless you pay some damn rent. Give me some of your chakra or we are both dead. The fox laughed, so bold. Since I have no desire to end like this, very well. Naruto felt the red-hot chakra flood his body, and with a cry he was again falling down the canyon. Eyes burning with red chakra, he sped through the hand seals just in time. Kuchios no Jutsu, summoning technique. The chakra formed and summoned none other than the Toad Boss himself, Gamabunta. Naruto hated being in the hospital. He had been taken there after his test with Gamabunta. The sour old toad was just as bad as Jiraiya. Both of them were insane. He wouldn't be surprised if their past was littered with dead apprentices who hadn't succeeded one of their little initiation trials. Naruto supposed that wasn't fully fair, but at the moment he didn't care. He was in one of the worst places in Konoha. The hospital. I'll make my escape soon, Naruto promised. Naruto decided as he was resting and recovering from the exhaustion and wounds he had endured trying to cling to Gamabunta that he wouldn't be summoning the chief toad very often. If he needed assistance in the form of a giant toad, he'd go with the more accommodating Gamaken. While he was a bit taciturn, he didn't try to throw him to his death. Naruto also hated not being there for team practice. It felt like he was letting his team down, which really chafed because both of his teammates had been completely accepting of his status as a Jinchuuriki. Naruto forced himself to get a little bit more rest. He would not miss the meeting time on the next day. Closing his eyes, he wondered if the pervy sage had any other training planned and if it would be any more reasonable. The month continued to pass with all three genin improving. Sakura's practical knowledge of genjutsu was quickly making her one of the most dangerous kind of opponents. The kind that can kill you before you even realize you were in danger. Even Sasuke's Sharingan wasn't proof against her new genjutsu techniques. Sasuke and Naruto's ability to detect and break genjutsu also rose as a byproduct of Sakura's new abilities. Sasuke had thought Kakashi's training was intense. Gari and Lee continued to run him ragged. It was only thanks to his Sharingan and his own natural grace that prevented some kind of serious injury to Sasuke. But with the intense training along with the increasing weight, Sasuke's taijutsu skills were approaching near Jonin levels. His speed and strength alone weren't enough to put him at that skill tier, but when combined with the predictive power of the Sharingan, it was doubtful any chunin in the village could match him in taijutsu. Naruto actually fell a bit behind Sasuke in taijutsu. While his greater stamina continued to make his strength and speed superior to Sasuke, the intense practice Sasuke received combined with the Sharingan meant he was flat out better than Naruto in taijutsu. This spurred Naruto to train even harder. Naruto's time with Jiraiya was not spent on taijutsu at all. Jiraiya decided that Naruto had made enough progress with accessing the Kyuubi chakra for now. The next time on the training agenda was something that he figured would take Naruto a long time to learn. The Rasengan. However, much to the Toad Sage's surprise, Naruto quickly learned the technique. The Kage Bunshin allowed Naruto to quickly pick up the beginning steps of the training. A dozen Naruto's training allowed for the total number of training hours to effectively multiply his efforts by a factor of 10. In addition, all of the hard work Kakashi had pushed for from Naruto on chakra control was paying dividends. Within just 1 week, Naruto had formed the Rasengan and could use it in a fight. Jiraiya often looked on as Team 7 trained after their morning exercises with their various temporary senseis. The genin actually put genjutsu and minor non-lethal traps around their secluded training area, but for one of Jiraiya's skills, it was child's play to avoid them. Watching them was a treat for him. Their teamwork was remarkable, and the degree of advancement they had in comparison to the academy reports was mind-boggling. The clay may have been of extremely high quality, but none could deny Kakashi being the master potter. Jiraiya knew that barring something terrible happening, he was looking upon the next Sannin. My hope is that they don't end in tragedy like we did. Kakashi returned from his S-class mission and reported immediately to the Sandaime. Hiruzen asked for the report. It is as we feared, Orochimaru is either leading or helping Otogakure. Hiruzen took a puff on his pipe. Why did he put Oto Genin through the Chunin exams? Kakashi responded, unknown. Nothing of their plans was written outside of research notes, and those were fit only for burning. Hiruzen narrowed his eyes and Kakashi quickly added, not that I did. While not positive, I believe it more likely than not that I escaped detected. Sarutobi could not help but feel guilt for how Orochimaru turned out. This is troubling Kakashi. We need to know what he is planning. Was this just an attempt to gather information about Konoha? Is he simply trying to integrate Oto into the shinobi world to draw income and missions? Kakashi considered before answering. All possibilities, but he may also be looking to do more harm than just that. He could be looking to kill you, kill any enemies he left behind, or sabotage our reputation by disrupting the Chunin exams. Nothing is beyond that monster. And that is what worries me, Kakashi. I am getting too old to anticipate all the possible threats. I shouldn't be the Hokage, Kakashi. My mind is not as sharp as it once was, to say nothing of my diminishing chakra reserves. Kakashi stared at the man known as the God of Shinobi, and knew what he was going to ask. It's time I pass the hat on, Kakashi. Konoha deserves a Hokage that can protect it properly. Kakashi looked away. Kakashi, it must be you. You have the skill, you have the temperament and the reputation needed. It must be you. Kakashi did not look at the Hokage. He knew the Hokage was weary, tired beyond mortal endurance. He had retired once and been forced to take up the hat and all its cares again. The simple fact was that Kakashi didn't think he was worthy of the hat. He had failed Rin and Obito. He had lost others while he was in ANBU. He was a skilled shinobi. If conflict occurred, he was needed in the field, not behind a desk. Moreover, he was not fit for the Hokage, not for a village like the Leaf. Hokage-sama, you do not want me as a Hokage. I respect the tradition and the history of this village. I understand why you and the others allow the civilians a place on the council. Hiruzen watched Kakashi carefully. His eyes met the one eye Kakashi kept uncovered. But I disagree. The civilians of this village have made us weaker. They are the principal source of the hatred against Naruto. If I am Hokage, I will do as I see fit, and the civilian council can be executed for treason and incompetence. The old man sighed heavily. Kakashi, Konoha is different only because of the way we treat our civilians. It is mutual respect that makes Konoha special. Surely you wouldn't end that? The Jonin looked at the Sandaime intently. Lord Hokage, I do not have the vision needed to be a Hokage. I am a soldier, an excellent shinobi. I value the lives of my comrades and will keep them safe. I have no patience for politics and the needs of money grubbers. I know my limitations. I do not have the patience to appease the civilians. Kakashi went further. I am not saying you are wrong, my wisdom is simply more limited. If I am the Hokage, I cannot rule as you would but as I see fit. I know this is incompatible with your vision for Konoha's future, which is why I cannot be the next Hokage. Hiruzen collapsed in his chair. Kakashi, who else is there? Kakashi lowered his head. That was the problem. Who else was there? Finally he said, Jiraiya has the strength. He also would echo the will of fire that you hold. Hiruzen shook his head, he won't do it either. His spy network is personally maintained and on there are rumblings Kakashi, he needs to keep the network active. In that case Shikaku Nora would serve admirably. Not strong enough, Hiruzen countered. So? Keep the best ANBU guards on him for protection. He will make the right decisions. The Hokage also muttered, with as lazy as he is the paperwork would never get done and our economy would self-destruct. Kakashi shrugged, it's not a perfect choice, but right now there are no good choices. For now you are still S-class level. I am not a medical nin, I can't tell you how much longer that will be the case, but for now you are the best choice. Very well Kakashi, since you will not take the mantle it will be my burden. Let's discuss what needs to be done about Oto and Orochimaru. Team 7 was excited about showing off their new abilities to Kakashi. Kakashi was proud of all of their progress and made but a few minor suggestions to the new team tactics they had developed. However, Kakashi only had one day with them before the Chunin exam finals began. He advised them to get a good night's rest. Before dismissing them he provided Sasuke with a pair of contacts from Yuki no Kuni, Land of Snow, that would allow him to use the Sharingan virtually undetected. A sensor shinobi could sense the chakra around his eyes and draw the right conclusion, but to everyone else his eyes would appear the same color as normal. This will allow you to watch for abilities during the Chunin exam for you to copy without anyone realizing you have unlocked your Sharingan. Sasuke nodded his thanks and the team dispersed. The next morning Team 7 arrived at the Chunin exam stadium. The stadium was packed with important nobles, civilians, and shinobi. The Chunin exams rotated around the villages on neutral and good terms with Konoha, so for many it had been a while since they had seen the exams. Who the competitors were was also interesting. The three children of the Kage were a strong draw of course, but also the clan heir Shikamaru Nora was a favorite from the Konoha group. And with the Hyuga being hailed as the genius of his academy class, the crowd agreed it was sure to be a fascinating Chunin exam finale. Team 7 saw their other classmates at the academy were already there. They exchanged pleasantries and talked about how everyone thought the matches were going to go. The general consensus was that Neji would do really well and that Shikamaru wasn't going to take it seriously. The group was evenly divided on Lee and Tenten. Sasuke knew Lee was going to do great. Not only was his taijutsu speed and strength utterly ridiculous, he had also picked up on other shinobi skills. Why he still couldn't mold chakra, Sasuke had taught him the arts of misdirection and subterfuge. The matches were announced again. Temari vs Neji would be up first. It would be followed by Gaara vs Misumi. The third match would be Kankuro vs Shikamaru, and the fourth match would be Tenten vs Lee. Then the winners in the top bracket, the winners of match 1 and 2 would fight. Then the winners of match 3 and 4 would fight. Then the last two remaining competitors would battle. Winning didn't guarantee a Chunin promotion, but in all but the rarest situation it did result in a Chunin promotion. The genin who lost were also eligible for a promotion if they demonstrated Chunin skills and qualities. Neji and Temari entered into the arena. Hey Gecko explained the rules or lack of them to the two Chunin hopefuls. Neji activated his dojutsu and announced, "You are a skilled kunoichi, however it is your fate to lose today." Temari narrowed her eyes. Fate? We'll see about that. Neji shook his head. This match has already been determined, you cannot win. Temari jumped back and fired a whirlwind from her fan. Neji could see the chakra in the air and easily dodged it. He rushed forward to get in close. Temari continued to step backward and manipulate wind energy with her fan. Neji was forced to dodge to the side to avoid the deadly blasts. However, he methodically got closer and closer. Temari leapt forward, swung with her iron fan, attempting to knock Neji out with a surprise strike. Neji saw it coming and narrowly avoided the strike by ducking. Now he was inside her guard and did a quick strike that closed a tenketsu on Temari's arm. Temari gasped in pain and stepped back and swung her fan again, however this time it was a feint and as Neji dodged she leaped away. Neji gave chase only for Temari to throw a kunai wrapped in an explosive note at the ground at his feet. Neji was slowed again and almost missed the next dodge of Temari's wind jutsu. Neji took a moment to breathe and said, "Close, but you aren't good enough to defeat a genius like me." Temari growled and was tempted to continue the fight. Instead, she glanced toward her sensei and her sensei shook his head slightly. Temari called out, "Proctor, I forfeit." Neji was surprised but simply shrugged, wise to give in to fate, perhaps you will make Chunin on the strength of your intelligence. Temari couldn't stop herself from rolling her eyes in response. Sasuke narrowed his eyes, something fishy was going on. Temari was nowhere near out of chakra, why did she hold back? Sure, Neji was good, but the girl should have fought, she was literally throwing away any chance of a Chunin promotion before of this. The next match was Gaara vs Misumi. Gaara arrived and was ready for the bout, but no one knew where Misumi was. The proctor gave him 10 minutes before calling the match a forfeit. The crowd was growing restless and annoyed. The first fight had started great but had an anticlimactic ending and now the second fight didn't even occur. A masked ANBU approached Kakashi and whispered something to him. Kakashi's one visible eye widened and he responded and then motioned for his genin team to follow him. Something is up. A large group of shinobi was spotted heading toward the village. I'm going to go investigate, but if anything happens here I'm counting on you to defend the Konoha with your full strength. All three genin were shocked. Kakashi had drilled into them the concept of hiding their true abilities from the eyes of the village since day one. Naruto asked, "What's going on, Kakashi-sensei?" Kakashi responded quietly, "Nothing is certain right now, but my instincts tell me something terrible is going to happen. It involves my mission out of the village. While I trust all of you, there are S-class secrets that I'm not cleared to share. I'm going to investigate along with an ANBU squad and deal with the unknown shinobi. Continue watching the exams and help the remaining ANBU, Jonin and Chunin if something happens." With that, Kakashi used his Shunshin and was gone. The ANBU were instructed to quietly inform the Jonin to be on guard for a disruption during the Chunin exams. All three genin were uneasy and they deactivated their weight seals. Naruto circumspectly made a dozen shadow clones and disguised them as civilians and started mingling in with the crowds. Their attention went back to the arena as the third match was announced. Kankuro vs Shikamaru was the next match. Shikamaru yawned, annoyed he would have to compete. Kankuro smirked at the lazy shinobi and said, "Don't worry, you'll soon be taking a very long nap." Shikamaru narrowed his eyes. At first, he wasn't going to blame Kankuro for the sins of his brother, but his attitude seemed to show they were cut from the same cloth. "Your brother injured by my best friend. I only have one question, do you approve of his actions?" The Suna shinobi saw an opportunity to rattle his opponent and said, "Sure, why not? Gaara probably did him a favor, a weakling like that would only get himself killed on a real mission." Shikamaru was fully alert and awake. He sprinted forward and Kankuro instantly went on guard. Kankuro threw a kunai at the charging genin which Shikamaru batted away. At close range the shadow user sped through his clan's hand seals. Kage no jutsu, shadow imitation technique, was spoken in a quiet voice as Nora's shadow raced along the ground and caught Kankuro in it. Shikamaru kept the jutsu in place as Kankuro struggled. Shikamaru grabbed at his shin kunai holster and pulled out a kunai prepared with an explosive tag. Kankuro mimicked the action but had no kunai to draw from there, so his hand was empty. He activated the tag and threw it directly at Kankuro's leg. The blade slashed into the leg and exploded, ripping the leg off. Naruto saw this and whistled, "Remind me never to get Shikamaru mad. He did exactly what was done to Choji." Sasuke shook his head, "That's only his puppet." Naruto did a double take, but sure enough, instead of blood and gore the smoke cleared to show splintered leg pieces of the Sunanin's puppet. The real Kankuro was on the ground and sprang up out of the bandages and threw a poison-tipped kunai at Shikamaru. Shikamaru released his jutsu and deflected the kunai with his own. Kankuro sneered, I guess you Konoha shinobi are out for revenge, huh? Too bad you released your jutsu. His puppet crow was no longer held by the technique and instantly sprang into action against Shikamaru. Shikamaru cursed and leapt back. He was on the run as poison, kunai, and other puppet attacks hounded him. How troublesome, I regret not training harder now. Shikamaru led the puppet back around toward Kankuro and initiated his jutsu, this time having the shadows seek out two targets. Kankuro saw the tactic and moved away with both the puppet and himself at the same time in opposite directions. As soon as they started to do this, the Noro clan heir sped towards Kankuro. Shikamaru needed to get his jutsu off on the puppet master, not the puppet, since the puppet master still had to manipulate chakra strings. Once he was caught, Crow would be done for as well. Now it was a race as Shikamaru rushed to get within range before Crow caught up to him. Noro did the calculations in his head and saw a small window of opportunity and again flashed through the hand signs for the Kagemain no Jutsu, shadow imitation technique. Kankuro couldn't quite outrun it due to being close to the wall and having to move perpendicular to the racing shadow. He sped Crow faster and faster, and then the shadow reached him. Sasuke sighed, Shikamaru just lost. Noro breathed a sigh of relief as Crow tumbled to a crash, no longer coming at him. It had stopped just a few feet from him. He was low on chakra, so he would finish him off quickly. As he was drawing a kunai, he felt movement behind him and saw a modified smoke bomb being launched by Kankuro, who had performed a kawarimi with his puppet right before the shadow hit. The smoke bomb was filled with poison and Shikamaru inhaled some and collapsed, his lungs bleeding from the inside. The proctor called the match and a medical team rushed in. Sasuke watched with his Sharingan and then nodded to his teammates. Shikamaru will live, but it will be a few days before he can breathe heavily without strain. Both Sakura and Naruto relaxed. The crowd cheered for the Kage son. It had been an interesting match. Asuma shook his head in disgust and headed after his student. Kurenai grabbed his arm. Asuma, I know you are worried about him, but Kakashi wanted us to be on guard for any trouble. Asuma scowled. Kakashi is paranoid, and nothing is going to happen here. Right now my student needs me, and I'm not going to sit around watching for something that won't happen. Asuma had hoped that Shikamaru would have taught the Tsunagen a lesson. While not normally big on revenge, the crippling of his student had hit him hard and he was bitter about it. He also worried about Shikamaru, but figured the poison wasn't lethal. But still, it was his job as a sensei to go and be with him now. Naruto itched to wipe the smug grin off of Kankuro's face. Shikamaru had been part of the small group of academy students that had not gone out of their way to pick on him. He and Choji deserved better. Naruto began to subconsciously radiate killing intent and Sasuke grabbed his arm. What are you doing? Naruto shook himself. Naruto hadn't meant to raise his killing intent like that, it had been almost instinctual. That concerned him as Kakashi-sensei had taught him to always be in control. Naruto shook himself. Sorry, I'll watch it. Sakura watched the two boys, they were both tense. She realized she was too. Kakashi really thought something was going to happen and it had them all on edge. The fourth and final part of the first set of matches would be Lee versus 10-10. Lee bowed to his teammate and said, let us make our sensei proud and showcase the power of our youth. 10-10 had long since become used to Lee and Gare's endless talk of youth and ignored it. She immediately began the fight by hurling waves of shuriken at Lee. Lee dodged with startling speed and smashed a smoke bomb on the ground. 10-10 was surprised. Since when does Lee use anything other than taijutsu? 10-10 had not spied on her teammate while he was working with Sasuke. She had not expected Lee to use subterfuge when his entire shinobi existence had been to attack directly with strength and speed. She threw more weapons into the smoke but didn't expect them to hit anything. More smoke bombs erupted around the arena, masking it from view. 10-10 danced back away from the smoke. She knew she couldn't afford to let Lee get close to her or it would be all over. 10-10 never saw the attack coming. She was backing away and did not realize Lee had released his weights and had sped out of the smoke, around the tree line and behind her. Lee wasn't the stealthiest shinobi, but he had been practicing with Sasuke. More importantly was the fact that Tenten never even considered the possibility that Lee would use stealth to get behind her and take her out. Lee smashed an elbow into the base of Tenten's neck, safely and effectively knocking her out. Lee was happy with his victory even though he felt guilty over how he did it. Sasuke had talked to him at length about the purpose of the Chunin exams. If the villagers just wanted the strongest genin to become Chunin, they would guarantee those who made it far enough were made Chunin. But they didn't do it that way, instead they evaluated the genin based on their skills. Lee was fantastic in a fight, but outside of that he lacked any shinobi arts. If he wanted a promotion he would need to show the judges that he could plan and outthink his opponent as well as outfight them. His flawless victory even without the use of chakra would be a powerful point in his favor. Lee gave a discreet nod to the stands, a bit away from where Sasuke stood. Sasuke was actually proud of his comrade. The boy was annoying and half-mad, but he was eager to learn and had taught Sasuke a lot about taijutsu. Kakashi had made another correct choice with Sasuke's training. Sasuke continued to be impressed with the foresight of his sensei. The next match would be Neji vs Gaara. However, before the contestants arrived, an AMBU approached the third Hokage and whispered an urgent message. Orochimaru, who had the senses to hear the whispered message, cursed and began the invasion earlier than planned. Signaling Kabuto to begin his genjutsu, Orochimaru and the sound for then acted. Sasuke watched in horror as the Hokage was taken captive and pushed to the roof and was then cut off by a barrier created by 4 unknown shinobi. All 3 members of Team 7 felt the genjutsu start to take hold and they instantly shouted, "Kai!" and broke through the jutsu. Around the stadium, civilians, shinobi and samurai guards of the dignitaries started collapsing unconscious. Taju Koge Bunshin no Jutsu. Multiple shadow clone technique. Instantly over 50 Narutos appeared. They started to fan out looking for threats and using their chakra to snap individuals out of the genjutsu. Sasuke saw an AMBU burn from trying to get through the barrier. Sasuke heard explosions coming from other locations in the village. He quickly asked Naruto to spread some of his clones out in all directions as scouts. Sasuke saw chakra being built up in massive proportions from where the Suna genin were located. Massive was an understatement, the chakra was immense. The killing intent soared and those who had avoided the sleep-inducing genjutsu trembled with fear. Sasuke had felt Kakashi and Zabuza go out with full force, but their combined killing intent paled before this monstrous chakra. Naruto felt a clone dispel. Dozens of Suna shinobi have entered the village and are heading this way. Another cone dispelled, damn it. Oto shinobi are hitting us too. Naruto shivered under the weight of the chakra and then paused. The chakra was different but familiar. Familiar as in similar to the Kyuubi chakra. Guys, we need to evacuate this place, it's a biju. Sasuke's eye snapped to Naruto. What? Naruto rapidly explained. Pervy Sage explained that a Jinchuuriki can channel the power of the biju, however, the risk is letting the biju out. While that releases maximum power, it also means the Jinchuuriki has no control. The biju will be nearly unstoppable and probably mad as hell, wanting to kill as many people as it can. Jonin and ANBU were responding to threats from the invading shinobi, others were standing around trying to figure out a way to get the barrier down. Naruto felt another chill go through him as they started to try to organize an evacuation. His most recent clone had popped, the Suna shinobi weren't trying to get into the arena, and they were creating a kill zone around the area preventing anyone from escaping. Naruto made another dozen clones and had them run toward ANBU and Jonin to report the scouting information. He looked at Sakura and Sasuke. In a few minutes that Suna Jinchuuriki is going to start slaughtering everyone. Everyone will run and the exits are going to turn into death traps. We have to break the ambush, let's go. Both Sakura and Sasuke nodded and they rushed toward one of the main exits. As they grew close, Sasuke called out warnings of explosive tags buried in the ground under a genjutsu. Naruto created another dozen clones and had them trigger the traps. When they reached the end of them, a hail of kunai hit the clones. The clones had almost as much speed and reflexes as Naruto, so they easily dodged or deflected the majority of the attacks. The clones broke through and were instantly hit by jutsu created by Jonin and Chunin level threats. Very few villages would send genin against other shinobi, so it was a safe bet that with few exceptions every shinobi they faced would be at least chunin rank. The clones' opponents were 3 squads at this exit. 2 squads were made up of 3 chunin with a senior chunin as the 4th member and leader. The lead squad had a jonin and 3 chunin Suna shinobi. Naruto felt most of the clones dispel and relayed the information to his team. Team 7 used their default battle tactic. Naruto created 20 clones and used a henge to disguise them as Sakura and Sasuke. He also added one to look like Kakashi-sensei. Sasuke and Sakura made normal academy clones that had no substance but would confuse the attacks. The clones charged first and then on came Team 7. Another barrage of kunai and shuriken met the clones. This time several of them shouted out Futon, Repusho. Wind release, gale palm. The clones using the jutsu shoved the weapons back, scattering them in all directions. In some cases they were a threat to the enemy shinobi, but no injuries were sustained. One Suna chunin began using hand seals and launched a futon, daitopper, wind release, great breakthrough, while his comrades ready more projectiles. The stronger directional wind jutsu would disrupt the Repusho technique and allow the projectiles to wreak havoc. Unfortunately for the Suna shinobi, Sasuke saw the attack with Sharingan even as the first part of the hand signs were being used. Sasuke rushed forward and let loose with Kaiten, Gokaku no Jutsu, fire release, great fireball technique, right as the chunin finished his wind jutsu. Fire beat wind and the daitopper actually fueled the fire and wind attack in the wrong direction. The Suna squad scattered, however one wasn't quite fast enough and was badly burned on his arm and fell back screaming. Meanwhile Sakura had not been idle. She launched her genjutsu attack on the enemy. Her handles crackled with faux electricity as she created the hand seals at moderate speed, shouting, Raitun, Mahi, lighting release, paralysis. Her attack was ambitious. It was aimed at the squad that included a jonin and 3 chunin. The jonin saw through the attack, but the 3 chunin were not so lucky. Naruto's clones instantly streaked forward, katana slashing down at them, going for the kill. The jonin was a seasoned veteran and saw what was happening and shouted out the genjutsu, "You aren't paralyzed, move." He defended his squad as best he could, deflecting attacks, interposing himself and using his speed and skill with his kunai to block attacks. He even managed to pop a couple. However, despite his skill, the Naruto clones were striking from too many directions and his subordinates were sitting ducks. One chunin managed to break the genjutsu just in time, however the other 2 weren't as lucky. One was decapitated by a blade strike, the second one was stabbed straight through his chest. He coughed blood and died as the clones went after fresh targets. At the same time, the 3rd squad was hoping to make a name for themselves by taking on the legendary copycat shinobi. One chunin molded his chakra and said, Doton, Doriyuso, earth release, earth flow spears. The ground beneath the Naruto clone in a henge of Kakashi suddenly transformed into spikes of stone, ramming straight towards the clone. The clone leapt into the air, avoiding the attack, only for a puppet covered in spikes across his body to erupt from the ground and try to hug him. The clone saw its demise coming and spent its last second throwing kunai at the chunin attacking him. None caused damage, but it was a small distraction. The clones had thinned out some, but several were still going and Naruto had to force himself not to smirk and become overconfident. Instead, he made another 20 clones, his chakra reserve still going strong. The jonin saw that he was creating the clones and went for Naruto himself. Naruto saw him coming and used the body substitution technique with a nearby clone. The jonin saw through the deception but had to deal with the clone anyway, as it was swinging a katana with tremendous force and speed at his neck. Ducking under the blow, the jonin snarled and risked a wind jutsu. One opponent had just used a fire release technique, not unexpected in the land of fire, but the speed of his jutsu should allow him to avoid suffering a similar fate. Futon, Shinkuha, wind release, vacuum wave, was the technique of choice. The experienced jonin completed the seals faster than the eye could follow. The technique compressed air into a blade that swept itself all around the Suna jonin. A couple of clones dashed out of the way, but several went down in explosions of smoke. Sakura was at the edge and stepped back and completed her second genjutsu of the fight. This one was targeted solely on the biggest threat, the jonin. This technique was the one Kurenai had taught her: Magen, Jubaku Satsu, demonic illusion, tree-biding death. The Jonin saw a tree sprout from the earth and wrap its limbs about him. He knew this was a genjutsu, but it was hard to fight the feeling of bark on skin. He struggled to gather his chakra and release the genjutsu before the caster reached him. Unfortunately for the Jonin, unlike Kurenai, Sakura had no intention of finishing off her opponent personally. No, that was Sasuke's job. He had seen her begin the genjutsu and was already speeding toward his target. Within the moment the Jonin had fallen under the genjutsu, Sasuke was on him and his kunai smashed into the Jonin's back and perforated his heart. Just as the Jonin managed the kai release to break the genjutsu, he felt his body go limp as he coughed up blood and died. The Suna shinobi were shocked at the unexpected start of the battle. They had been expecting fleeing civilians and panicked shinobi trying to reach safety, fleeing the wrath of an insane demon. Not an organized assault that left 3 of their members dead and 1 badly wounded. The Chunin squad leader signaled the reserve team stationed in between exits. Backup was needed, and desperately. The battle continued with the clones pressuring the enemy Chunin constantly. Every time they managed to actually dissipate several of them, more would be created. The clone creator was constantly using Kawarimi and Shunshin to keep from being picked out by the enemy. For Sasuke's part, he wrecked the spike puppet with another fire jutsu and watched for his opportunity to strike. He didn't have long to wait in the chaotic melee of katana-wielding clones and desperate Suna shinobi defending against the deadly effective if straightforward blade attacks. Sasuke was then right there in the midst of 2 Chunin and ripped the throat out of one with a kunai before lashing out with a kick that cracked ribs and threw the Chunin back into a nearby building. Naruto had just finished a Kawarimi and lashed out with his chakra kunai, launching it at the shinobi as he hit the building. The shinobi was stunned from the kick and didn't have time to form chakra or dodge, so he put up an arm that had leather padding and took the blow, seeking to minimize the damage. His eyes widen in pain as the chakra kunai pierced the leather, pierced skin, muscle and shattered bone before crashing through his lower abdomen and cracking the stone building behind him. The Chunin was now in the physical state of shock and was dying. The Oto Shinobi Reserve had seen the signal and dispatched a heavy kill team. For Jonin moved out with a second Chunin squad as backup and support. They came across the battlefield, seeing over half of the initial 3 squads decimated. One Oto nin spat, "Pathetic Suna fools, this is a joke." Naruto sent his clones at the new threats only to watch as the 4 Jonin shredded them. Jonin level squad incoming, don't engage. Sasuke finished off another puppet. This one had fired poisonous senbon. If it hadn't been for his Sharingan, he might have been hit. Glad I'm an archer. Naruto knew this was going to create collateral damage, but he didn't have much of a choice. Dealing with the 1 Jonin hadn't been too taxing, but that had been with all 3 of the squad working together. For Jonin threats at the same time would simply be too much. Naruto took a deep breath, bit his thumb and pushed forward with his chakra. Kuchios no Jutsu. Summoning technique.